Chapter 1838. He Shaolin himself wasn't a king tier, so he looked forward to trampling a king tier beneath his feet. This could be said to be the most wonderful thing in life. He looked at Fu Gaoyun proudly. This time, he had ruthlessly trampled on Fu Gaoyun's face. Even if Fu Gaoyun reached the dividing soul tier or even the immortal palace tier in the future, he would still not be able to wash away the humiliation he had suffered today. Hee, I've broadened my horizons again today. What does it mean to have no bottom line? What does it mean to be a shameless villain? Ling Han shook his head and strode forward. The Empress stood behind him with her hands clasped behind her back. She couldn't be bothered to deal with these trash. Ling Han, don't be in such a hurry. It's not your turn yet. Bei Xinming sneered. This fellow was truly too naive to think that he would let him off. But I'm already getting impatient. Ling Han walked forward. He had no interest in Bei Xuanming's disgusting performance. Moreover, although he had severed all ties with Fu Gaoyun, he still owed the latter a favor. At the very least, the blood dragon armor that the Empress was wearing had been given to him by Fu Gaoyun. Moreover, this fellow was quite a nice person. Halt! A man charged out from behind Bei Xinming. He raised his fist and punched towards Ling Han. With a servant around, if the master had to make a move, would there still be any meaning for a servant to exist? Hong, this fist smashed over, the power a bit astonishing, triggering the great Tao. Symbols appeared one after another. This was a third Severance elite, and he had already cultivated to the peak stage. In truth, his battle prowess was even stronger than Bei Xuanming's. It was just that he was weaker than he Shaolin. He threw a punch, intending to crush Ling Han. Ling Han made his move. No one knew how he did it. It was just a very casual movement, and that person's wrist was grabbed, and then the attack stopped. Bei Xinming instantly gaped in shock. In his mind, Ling Han was only a first Severance, so no matter how freakish he was, he could not possibly be a match for a third Severance elite. However, this move of his was a resounding slap to his face. Third Severance Ling Han was actually a third Severance? How was this possible? How long had it been? And he had advanced from the first Severance to the third Severance, surpassing her in cultivation level. How could there possibly be such a thing in this world? Does it feel good to beat people up? Ling Han asked the man calmly. That person's bile was about to burst out, and he didn't know how to answer. Ling Han grabbed the other person's hand and slapped his face. Does it feel good? Does it feel good? Every time he asked, he would slap his face. The man's face was bruised and swollen, yet Ling Han had no intention of stopping. Very quickly, blood spurted out, followed by minced flesh and broken teeth. Even his bones were exposed, and the scene was extremely bloody. Ling Han had no sympathy for him at all. This guy clearly wanted to kill him with a single punch. If it wasn't for the fact that his cultivation speed was fast enough and that he was an emperor, who could he complain to if he was beaten to death? Stop! Bei Xinming shouted. He had no choice but to drink. If he, the master, did not react when his subordinate was beaten, who would be willing to risk their lives for him in the future? But Ling Han will pay attention to him. The slaps were sent flying, and Ling Han was still dragging that person as he closed in on Bei Xinming. His eyes were filled with killing intent. It was obvious that he was going to be next. Shaolin! Bei Xinming hurriedly called out. He Shaolin nodded and leaped back. He showed a cold smile and said, Third Severance King Tier. Hee, in front of me, you are just a fart. King Tiers could only be invincible among those at the same cultivation level, and he not only had the advantage of a minor level, but he had also tempered at the peak stage of the fourth Severance for who knew how many millions and millions of years. His battle prowess was completely on par with King Tiers. How could he not have a sense of superiority? Ling Han dragged that person and walked towards He Shaolin like a dead dog. He did not speak. In his eyes, this person was only a mass of air, and there was no need to pay attention to him at all. Arrogant. He Shaolin humphed coldly and raised his right hand, slapping towards Ling Han's face. You like to slap people, right? Then I'll let you have a taste of being slapped. Pa? Ling Han raised a hand and grabbed He Shaolin's wrist. He Shaolin's expression instantly froze. How is this possible? Bei Xianming was also dumbfounded. In his eyes, He Shaolin's strength was enough to rival holy sons and holy daughters at the peak stage of the fourth severance, so how could his wrist have been grabbed by Ling Han? It was as if there was a huge disparity between their battle prowess. You also want to have fun, don't you? Ling Han said calmly. He raised He Shaolin's hand and slapped it back at him. He Shaolin hurriedly mustered his full strength to resist, but he was completely no match for Ling Han. Pa! A fiery pain immediately spread over his face, causing tears to flow out. First, pain, and second, shame. He had been slapped in public, so how could he endure it? Ling Han swung his hands, and He Shaolin and the other person were thrown into Bei Xuanming's hands. Their limbs were spread wide, and they had long since fainted. Bei Xianming involuntarily took a step back, a cold expression on his face. Just like how Fu Gaoyun couldn't find any reinforcements here, he couldn't find any either. Although he was not the only holy son of the lunar sect that had entered this place, the relationship between holy sons was a competitive one, so how could they ask for help for their personal grievances? Firstly, he couldn't bring himself to do this, and secondly, he would only become a joke if he asked others. Thus, Fu Gaoyun could only resign himself to his fate just then. Now, if it was him, he would also do the same. I admit defeat, he said through gritted teeth, veins bulging on his forehead. After saying this, he had his subordinates help He Shaolin and the other person up. Even if they couldn't defeat him, couldn't they just hide? Ling Han humphed and said, You want to leave just like that? What do you want? Bei Xianming asked darkly. He also knew that he had to pay a price. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, Just then, didn't you say that I had offended the Zai clan, and should behave with my tail between my legs? Let me tell you something. Just a few days ago, I killed Zai Bingyun. Bei Xianming felt his mind tremble, and a loud boom rang out. He almost fainted. Fake, it had to be fake. If he had only offended Zai Bingyun, then even if the Zai clan wanted to deal with Ling Han, they wouldn't dare to go to war, but if Zai Bingyun was killed, then the situation would be completely different. Who could humiliate a celestial king tier force? At that time, perhaps everyone here would have to die with him. Bei Xianming trembled, and felt that Ling Han had to be a madman, or a swindler, making such a meaningless joke. Why you must be spouting nonsense? Ling Han broke into a smile and said, You really think too highly of yourself. How would I have the time or the mood to spout nonsense with you? Didn't you say that I was very bold? Then I'll let you experience it. He flicked a finger, and xiao, a flash of sword light swept out, piercing into the top of Bei Xuanming's head, and then shooting out from the back of his head. Bei Xuanming's legs instantly weakened, and he knelt onto the ground, his eyes rapidly losing their luster. Fu Gaoyun and the others were all numb with fear, and Fu Gaoyun also thought back to when Ling Han had asked him whether he could kill Bei Xianming. At that time, he had thought that it was only a joke, but looking at it now, killing intent had risen in Ling Han's heart. This was simply too audacious. Chapter 1840. Ling Han stayed in the gorge for a day, taking a short break. He had obtained a great many spoils of battle, and on this day he was making an inventory. For example, he had the divine demon sword swallow godly metal. Aside from the large pile of pseudo-divine metal that he had obtained from Chen Zhaoyang, he had also obtained a considerable amount from Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng. They were all inheritors of great sects, their wealth extremely shocking. He had the divine demon sword devour all of it, and this future celestial tool also advanced into the level of a 3-star pseudo-celestial tool. 3 out of 10 were gone, and he was almost a third done. Ling Han was very satisfied. The divine demon sword had once again surpassed him in terms of cultivation level. Now, it could even match Yin Soul and Yang Soul tiers. Unfortunately, it was only in terms of toughness. Because his cultivation level had not reached that level yet, there was no way for him to brand higher regulations into the divine demon sword, causing the might of the divine demon sword to also be limited. It was fine as long as he could keep up with his realm. He had also refined the tree core of the white demon tree and cultivated a murderous aura. This murderous aura was based on the regulations of slaughter, and in terms of destructive power, It was even more powerful than the sharpness of metal. In fact, everyone had baneful aura, but it was often uncontrollable. However, once one cultivated the decimation law, one could actively use baneful aura. It was not only their own, but also that of others. The stronger the baleful aura, the stronger the battle prowess. This was a classic case of nurturing battle through battle. The more they fought, the crazier they would become. A day later he decided to set off with the Empress. They would head towards the final volcanic region and explore the depths of this mystery realm. When they walked out, they saw that the canyon had suddenly become lively. As it turned out, bewitching Maiden Ro had arrived. This stunner from the Purity sect was extremely charming. Every step she took was graceful. It was unknown how many men's eyes were glued to her. Those who had strong willpower almost drooled. Bewitching Maiden Ro also discovered Ling Han and the Empress, and the corners of her lips involuntarily twitched. Of course, she drank the reincarnation tea, and because she was angry, she drank the whole bottle of tea in one breath. In the end, she regretted it half to death. That was definitely immortal tea. Although there was no comprehension of the rules in it, it could help her comprehend the Tao. Dreaming of eternity was extremely awesome. You bastard! Can't you just tell me when you're giving me something good? You made me waste half of it. I want to bite you, you bastard. Bewitching Maiden Ro looked at Ling Han, and really wanted to pounce on him and bite him, but when she thought that Ling Han was embroiled in trouble, and if she pounced on him, she would probably also be covered in blood, she could only forcibly suppress the urge. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. He held the Empress's hand and left. The two of them walked side by side, but they had only taken a few steps when they suddenly heard a pung. The ground beneath their feet suddenly split open, and 3 figures shot out. There was a cold glint in their hands, and they slashed, and stabbed at Ling Han. At the same time, the boulders in the surroundings also suddenly changed. They all disappeared, and at least 10 figures leaped out, also launching attacks at Ling Han. Every angle was locked down from every direction. Ling Han was slightly surprised. It wasn't that he had been ambushed, but that these people had hidden themselves. He hadn't discovered their existence until they attacked. This kind of concealment technique was somewhat praiseworthy. Just as he was sighing in admiration, these attacks had already reached him. Bewitching Maiden Ro was shocked at first, and had the urge to lend a hand, but she immediately recalled how freakish Ling Han was, and dismissed this thought. She had seen with her own eyes that even Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng had not been able to do anything to Ling Han when they detonated their divine fetus. How could the combined forces of a dozen or so of them be able to match the might of the detonation of a divine fetus? The attacks of a dozen or so landed, and the light of regulation surged chaotically, forming a terrifying great explosion that surged endlessly. In the distance, everyone was stunned by this sudden attack, and then they all shook their heads. Being ambushed by so many people, and there were even a few king-tier elites among them, he was definitely dead. Who asked Ling Han to be so high-profile? When the light of regulation dispersed, they saw that Ling Han and the Empress were standing where they were as if nothing had happened. There wasn't the slightest bit of injury on their bodies, and there wasn't even the slightest sign of battle. This, impossible! One of the ambushers couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Even if you could block all of their attacks, it couldn't possibly be so easy. This was naturally because Ling Han had cast the banishing technique on himself and the Empress. With his present strength, the separate space was definitely not something that these trash could break. Ling Han looked at that person and said, "How would you trash know my level?" Peng, he shot out a punch, and that person exploded, turning into a rain of blood. When the other ambushers saw this, they all paled in shock and hurriedly turned to flee. There were a dozen or so of them, and he was only one person. At most, he would only be able to catch up to 1 or 2 of them. However, they were really too naive. The Empress humphed coldly. Shwa, shwa, shwa. 10 battle beasts appeared, each roaring as they pounced on an ambusher. The battle beasts were terrifying, and in just a few moves, they had burned an ambusher into ashes. This was so frightening that the people in the surroundings almost wet their pants in fright. You couple were really too strong, weren't you? Ling Han also moved casually, and as lightning shot out, the remaining few ambushers were all killed. He clapped his hands, and with an incredibly casual expression, he took the Empress's hand and left, as if nothing had happened. The people in the surroundings looked at each other, all of them speechless. After a long while, there was a flurry of discussion, and they were amazed at the strength of Ling Han and the Empress. Of course, there were also some people who were talking about the Empress's exquisite beauty. Humph, no matter how freakishly talented he is, he killed Bei Xianming, and will be killed by the lunar sect as soon as he leaves the mystery realm, a person with thin eyelids said with envy and hatred. It's fine that you are strong, but you actually managed to hook up with such a beautiful woman? Is there still justice in this world? All the advantages in the world have been taken by you alone. That's right, do you really think that you can just leave after killing the holy son of a 3-star sect? There was more than one person with thin eyelids. Hee, after we leave, everyone, don't forget to report this to the lunar sect. There was no shortage of people who didn't like the excitement. A considerable number of people laughed. Ling Han's strength made it hard for them to breathe, so they naturally viewed him as a thorn in their side. For example, though Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng were also ridiculously powerful, they were the successors of celestial king-tier forces, and were existences that they could only look up to. They couldn't even arouse jealousy in their hearts. But who the hell was Ling Han? He was only the vassal of a 3-star force, and yet he could surpass them, holy sons and holy daughters. Shio. It was at this moment that 3 figures descended. They were Lin Fang, Ting Xin, and Wei Nian. Fairy Lin. Brother Ting. Brother Wei. Everyone hurriedly greeted them. These 3 were all holy sons and holy daughters, and their talent was even more outstanding. Otherwise, it was impossible that they had passed through the Ascending Dragon Palace, and the others had not. Why have the 3 of you only arrived now? A holy son asked. Lin Fang pondered for a moment, and then said, Isn't it because of Ling Han? Ling Han again? Everyone was stunned. Chapter 1841. How is Ling Han? Those people asked curiously. Lin Fang glanced at bewitching Maiden Ro, and only then said, Ling Han did not just kill Bei Xianming. There was also Beiyu Xiong and Chen Zhao Tian. She listed out names one after another. They were either the holy sons and holy daughters of 3-star sects, or the successors of 3-star clans. This. Not only were the others dumbfounded, but they also broke out in cold sweat. That guy was simply a star of misfortune. How many kings did he kill in a single breath? Fortunately, that guy didn't start a massacre just now. Everyone was puzzled. How was this fellow going to escape the encirclement of so many 3-star forces after leaving the mystery realm? Ling Han would definitely die. Why did he have to act so recklessly? Lin Fang withheld the news that Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng had been killed because she, Ting Sen, and the others wanted to personally report this news. Though they might incur the wrath of the great sects, they would also be able to form relations with 2 great celestial king-tier forces because of this. Everyone shook their heads. This time, Ling Han was definitely dead for sure. Otherwise, if it was just the lunar sect alone, the Fu clan could still just barely stand against it. However, with so many 3-star forces attacking together, Ling Han was definitely dead for sure. Ling Han and the queen walked out of the canyon and entered an area that no one else could set foot in. Ling Han was fine, but the Empress had to use the flame control technique. Otherwise, the raging fire element would instantly burn her to ashes. At this point, the 9 heavens flame became restless, as if it wanted to fly out of Ling Han's dantian. Ling Han harumphed. It didn't matter what relationship the 9 heavens flame had with the immortal king in the past. Now that it had become his source energy, it could only listen to him. Otherwise, he would rather give it up. What was the use of a power that didn't listen to his commands? Moreover, this power was still in his body. Once it went astray, it would cause great trouble. The 9 heavens flame immediately became obedient, like a child being scolded by an adult. It even revealed a wronged expression. Ling Han was unmoved. When it came to his own strength, he had to be absolutely sure. Half a day later, they arrived at the foot of the volcano. Along the way, they'd obtained a large amount of blood dragon stones. Because no one had ever reached this step, it was obvious how great their harvest was. Who knew how many billions of years had passed, and blood dragon stones were practically everywhere. There was no need to search for them at all. They had a bountiful harvest, and behind them, bewitching Maiden Ro was also happily harvesting in the outer regions. She couldn't reach the depth of Ling Han and Li Xiandao, but she could go further than the others. Naturally, her gains were not small. Bewitching Maiden Ro watched as the figures of Ling Han and the other young man disappeared from her sight, and couldn't help but be filled with curiosity. What would these two people discover in that volcano? Then, when the mystery realm became violent again, how would they escape? Once the news spread, almost half of the factions would make a move against Ling Han, and there were even 2 Celestial King tier factions among them. Though the 2 of you were freakish, one was at the 3rd severance, and the other was at the 2nd severance. No matter how you thought about it, there was no possibility of survival. Ling Han and the Empress ascended the mountain. There was no path here, but the 2 of them used their hands and feet, so it was naturally not difficult for them to climb. Flying was not advisable here. There was a violent aura reverberating in the mountains, and if one touched it, it would definitely be a dead end. The eruption of the volcano had only suppressed the violent aura in this place, but there were still some scattered aura reverberating in the air, and touching it would be fatal. "Little Han, hey Little Han!" An enthusiastic shout traveled over from behind. The large black dog was currently sprinting over. Even though he was only using his 2 legs, his speed was astonishingly fast, and it didn't take long for him to catch up. Ling Han couldn't help but be surprised and asked, "Why have you come over?" "Grandpa Dog is going to go on a long journey very soon, and thinking that I haven't said goodbye to you, I specially rushed over." The large black dog put a hand on Ling Han's shoulder. "Grandpa Dog is loyal, right?" Ling Han chuckled. How much trouble had this damn dog caused him, and so on. "You haven't cultivated the flame control technique, so how can you ignore the fire element here? Even the blood dragon armor didn't have such powerful defensive abilities. Even Immortal Palace tier elites don't dare to come here, and Ascending Origin tier elites don't even know, so how can a damn dog like you?" "This." The large black dog scratched his head, suddenly looked up, and sighed ruefully. "The weather today is not bad. The moon is bright, and the sun is very bright." "Fuck off." "Little Black, who exactly are you?" Ling Han couldn't help but ask. A freak like the large black dog had already surpassed the ability that a severing mundane tier should have. In the past, he had even bitten a 4th Severance Grand Elder with his Genesis tier cultivation level. This was very unrealistic. At least, Ling Han had never heard of anyone that could be so freakish. The large black dog's eyes swiveled, and after a long while he said, "At this time, Grandpa Dog doesn't want to hide it from you anymore. In fact, I am your long-lost father." "Fuck off." Ling Han kicked him. He was actually trying to take advantage of him. The large black dog pondered for a moment, and finally said, "Fine, I'm going to leave soon. Even if I tell you, I won't let you think that you'll always want to rely on Grandpa Dog." He paused and then proudly said, "I am a Celestial King." Pooh. Ling Han instantly spluttered with laughter. This damn dog was a Celestial King. What Celestial King would act like this? He laughed loudly, and as he laughed, his laughter grew softer. Then he stared at the large black dog. This was because the large black dog's expression was extremely serious, and he didn't look like he was joking at all. If this were any other place, even if the large black dog had such an expression, Ling Han would think that he was pretending. However, the problem here was that even Immortal Palace tier elites couldn't enter, so the large black dog had to be at least at the Ascending Origin tier. Guess. This damn dog said that he wanted to steal Celestial King Ling Miao's underwear, so he wasn't joking. This despicable dog. He really is a Celestial King. Ling Han emphasized. The large black dog sneered and said, "When I was dominating the world, how glorious was I. Countless female Celestial Kings fought to become my steeds, and I only chose a few of the most beautiful ones. They're slightly inferior to you, my wife." He glanced at the Empress. Ling Han solemnly asked, "Why are you helping me?" The large black dog pointed at Ling Han's dantian with a smile, and asked, "Didn't that guy tell you?" Small Tower Ling Han's heart trembled. Sure enough, the large black dog and Small Tower knew each other, and they were definitely good friends. He shook his head and said, "No." The large black dog scratched his head and said, "I was a supreme celestial king at the time, and I was either at the 8th or 9th heaven. However, for some reason, I was severely wounded, and entered into a state of deep sleep to recover from my injuries. This dream lasted for eons. When I was reborn, my cultivation level had fallen to rock bottom, and I couldn't remember anything that had happened before I was wounded. It was only after I entered the celestial realm that I awakened a portion of my memories, and my cultivation level also returned to above the ascending origin tier, below the celestial king tier. After all, the celestial king tier is far too difficult to overcome." Hearing the large black dog say this, Ling Han felt like he was in a dream. Not only was this despicable dog a celestial king, but it was also possible that he had reached the peak stage. If he wasn't at the 8th or 9th heaven, then he was at the pinnacle stage. "I still don't understand why you're helping me," Ling Han said again. Chapter 1842. The large black dog shook his head and said, "You're too weak now, so knowing too much won't do you any good. At first, Grandpa Dog wanted to guide you all the way to Celestial King tier, but as Grandpa Dog's strength increases, I'm afraid that a few old monsters will sense it. If I stay by your side, you'll be in too much danger." Ling Han was speechless. What kind of existence could make an 8th or even 9th heaven celestial king call an old monster? It was definitely a 9th heaven celestial king. He thought back. Though the large black dog had repeatedly caused trouble for him, it could also be seen as a form of training for him. On the other hand, even if the large black dog didn't provoke someone, for example, Zai Bingyun, wouldn't there be conflict between Ling Han and her? For the heavenly Dao Jade, a battle was definitely unavoidable, and with Zai Bingyun's ruthlessness, the two of them would still have to fight to the death in the end. The large black dog only caused this conflict to erupt prematurely. Moreover, if elites really made a move with the large black dog's strength, he could completely resolve it. Everything was just to train Ling Han. Of course, the large black dog was definitely not a good person. He had swindled people and had even set his eyes on a certain celestial king's body. Not only would the large black dog do such immoral things, but only he would think of such things. Previously, the large black dog had already given him some advice on cultivation, especially on the 5th severance. This was a hurdle that he had to cross if he wanted to become a peak stage celestial king. If Ling Han carelessly crossed this hurdle, then it would be too late for regret. "What's the deal with this volcano?" Ling Han asked. The large black dog glanced at the top of the mountain, a rare expression of desolation on his face, and said, "An old friend is buried here. In the past, he failed to advance to the 9th heaven celestial king tier, and his remains were buried here. This was his own will, and he was willing to use countless years to erase his will, leaving behind pure essence so that those who came after him could be reborn." Ling Han couldn't help but tremble, and he said, "Although the 9th heaven celestial king tier is a supreme peak stage, there's no need for an 8th heaven celestial king to give up his life for it, right? At the height of an 8th heaven celestial king, there really weren't many people in this world that were a match for him. Moreover, his lifespan was unlimited, so why was there a need to rush to advance to the 9th heaven? Perhaps after a few epochs, he would collect countless source powers of heaven and earth and celestial medicines, and his chances would be greater? Why fight to the death?" "Brat, you don't understand." The large black dog patted Ling Han's shoulder. "On the surface, this world appears peaceful, but in reality, a terrifying killing intent is concealed beneath this tranquility. Grow up quickly. Otherwise, everything will be destroyed when this dark storm blows." Ling Han knew that if he asked in detail, the large black dog would definitely not answer. Just like Small Tower, it would always avoid answering crucial questions. In other words, his strength was still too weak. He nodded slowly. Although he was curious about what this dark storm was, his priority now was to increase his strength. "What relationship does this immortal king have with the 9 heavens flame?" asked Ling Han. The large black dog chuckled and said, the source power of heaven and earth can evolve. For example, the heavenly Tao Jade that you obtained was born from the source power of heaven and earth, yet it is no longer the source power of heaven and earth. As for the nine heavens flame, it can also develop its own intelligence. From then on, it will no longer be a source of heaven and earth, but a living being. Ling Han was astonished, and he asked, "You're saying that this immortal king was born from the nine heavens flame?" No wonder the nine heavens flame had been so excited just then. That's right. The large black dog nodded and said, "This immortal king is known as the heavenly fire celestial king, and he was skilled in manipulating fire. After he passed away, a wisp of his remnant flame remained unextinguished for billions of years, and a new nine heavens flame was born. Meanwhile, his corpse has been burning here for billions of years, and the murderous aura of the celestial king has already been melted away, leaving behind only his essence. I'll use this essence to refine you. I won't increase your cultivation level, but I'll only strengthen your foundation so that you can reach the pinnacle in the future." "Others won't be able to use this kind of power?" Ling Han asked. "Of course." The large black dog replied proudly and said, "The immortal king was born from the source power of heaven and earth. If it weren't for me, he would rather return his essence to heaven and earth." Ling Han became even more curious. From the large black dog's words, the heavenly fire celestial king had actually failed in his attempt to break through to the ninth heaven. However, he had voluntarily given up on life and used his essence to help those who came after him. Even Ling Han couldn't help but admire the heavenly fire celestial king's character. "Come, Brett. We've prepared for hundreds of millions of years, all for the sake of this day's glory," the large black dog said solemnly. "With this celestial king's essence to refine you, you'll also have a better chance of advancing to the fifth severance." The nine heavens flame that had attained Tao had been refined for hundreds of millions of years, yet the essence it had left behind was only enough to give a better chance of advancing to the fifth severance? Wasn't the fifth severance far too difficult? Advancing to the fifth severance has always been extremely difficult. Moreover, your foundation is far too weak, and you haven't been strengthened by the resources of a top-notch celestial king tier level force. Although you've cultivated to perfection at every cultivation level since you came from a small world, your resources are far too important." The large black dog sighed with emotion and said, "Now, it's time for you to truly defy the heavens and change your fate." Ling Han was a little skeptical. He wasn't inferior to any prodigy. Weren't you, Zai Bingyun, and Luo Changfeng also descendants of celestial king tier level forces? Yet, hadn't he still killed them? Moreover, his cultivation level was slightly lower than theirs. The large black dog couldn't help but scoff and say, "Do you think I'm comparing you to that kind of trash? You're wrong. Those that can be taken seriously by Grandpa Dog have to at least be descendants that have been nurtured by seventh heaven celestial king tier level forces. If you encounter them, then you'll know how terrifying such prodigies are. In this kind of small place, celestial king tier level forces are completely unable to nurture celestial king descendants, but in true great sects, those that can be chosen to become holy sons and holy daughters will definitely be able to become celestial kings. The only difference is the number of heavens they will reach in the future." Hearing the large black dog say this, Ling Han's arrogance slowly faded and a solemn expression appeared on his face. "There are many such celestial king tier level forces?" Ling Han asked. It has always been the Western celestial realm that is stronger than the Eastern celestial realm. However, even in the Eastern celestial realm, there are also several ninth heaven celestial king tier level sections. It's just that you're so far away from them that you don't have the chance to meet a true prodigy," the large black dog said. "It's not that I'm trying to discourage you, but if you were to be placed among the true celestial king tier level descendants, you would at most rank in the lower middle." Ling Han was slightly unwilling to accept this, and he said, "Don't forget, I still have two source powers of heaven and earth. It's precisely because you've already taken them into account that you can rank in the lower middle." The large black dog shook his head. Ling Han had indeed been dealt a blow, but his fighting spirit instantly ignited. He looked at the mountain peak and said, Then, what will happen after I defy the heavens and change my fate? You'll be in the middle or upper middle, the large black dog said with uncertainty. This was at most only in the upper middle. An expression of disbelief appeared on Ling Han's face. Was this damn dog purposefully trying to discourage him? Even if it was to stimulate his fighting spirit, there was no need to do this, right? Hee, if I told you that there was someone who continuously gave up 1,000 incarnations in order to cultivate the severing mundane tier to perfection, would you be so shocked that you wouldn't even be able to fart? The large black dog asked with a chuckle. Chapter 1844. Ling Han took a step forward and channeled his origin power. The power of regulations manifested, especially the 9 heavens flame, which surged fiercely. The large black dog formed another hand seal and pointed at the giant in the sky. The giant's chest lit up. Pooh, a fist-sized rock flew out and was burning fiercely. This was his heart. It had originally been incredibly massive, but now it had been refined by him and had shrunk to the size of a fist. Xiao, the flaming heart flew toward the large black dog, as quick as lightning. If it were an immortal palace tier, it would definitely be pierced through in a single strike, but the large black dog had once been a celestial king, and even if his cultivation level had dropped, he still had some abilities that surpassed his cultivation level. Moreover, he clearly knew how to deal with all of this. Freeze! The large black dog stretched out a paw, and the flaming heart immediately stopped. Then, it slowly hovered above Ling Han's head. Close your eyes and calm your mind, let go of everything, and use the flame control technique. Ling Han did as he was told and sat down. The large black dog pointed again, and instantly, the flaming heart poured down like a waterfall. I'll give you a sliver of its essence to help you break through to the 3rd severance. When this brat has finished defying the heavens and changing his fate, the rest of the benefits will be yours to absorb. The large black dog waved his paw, and a small dot immediately flew out from the flaming heart, drifting toward the Empress. This small dot hovered above the Empress's head and began to pour down like a waterfall of flames. The Empress also sat down and absorbed the benefits. She didn't feel the slightest bit embarrassed, because in her eyes, everyone should do anything for her, so what need was there for her to be polite? Boom, a landslide and tsunami rose up in Ling Han's body. Every cell in his body became a world, and then was tempered by the power of flames, advancing in a higher direction. A miracle could be achieved through repeated tempering. It was just like how level 20 godly metal could never become divine metal, but could be continuously strengthened through layer upon layer, reaching the height of 10-star pseudo-divine metal, only a little bit away from true divine metal. It was the same for Ling Han. His body wasn't perfect enough, and this celestial king flame was helping him refine the impurities in his body, leaving only the most essential and strongest parts. Then, it would use its own celestial king essence to help Ling Han strengthen. Otherwise, Ling Han would definitely be incinerated if he just refined it without replenishing it. Even so, he could not help but let out a groan. This was really too painful. It was so deep into his consciousness that even knocking him unconscious was useless. He could still clearly feel it. This was a fundamental transformation. Ling Han wasn't a divine fetus, but what was a divine fetus? An ancestor of an immortal king, and then a segment of the immortal king's laws manifested on a certain descendant, and they became a divine fetus. They possessed powerful abilities, and were usually invincible among those of the same cultivation level. Now, an 8th heaven celestial king had perished, but he had refined his own divine body and extracted its essence to help Ling Han. However, this wasn't enough to completely improve Ling Han's foundation. One must know that the Heavenly Fire Immortal King was qualified to attempt the 9th layer back then. Even though he did not succeed, it was undeniable that he was extremely powerful. Furthermore, he was a 9 heavens flame that was nurtured by the source energy of the heavens and earth. As such, how precious would such a gift be? Ling Han's body was developing in the direction of becoming a divine fetus. However, there would still be a vast gap between divine fetus. A fragment of regulations left behind by a 1st heaven celestial king could compare to an 8th heaven celestial king. Moreover, It was a gift from such a powerful eighth heaven celestial king. Moreover, it was a gift that he had obtained after refining his own divine body. Ling Han forcefully endured the pain and channeled the flame control technique, guiding the flames to transform his body. At the same time, he also channeled the indestructible heaven scroll to protect his weakened divine sense. Otherwise, he would definitely collapse under the scorching flames. Old friend, you can finally rest in peace. The large black dog removed his laughable blood dragon armor. He had only intended to deceive others, but he no longer needed it now. Of course, he was still unwilling to remove his iron underwear. Otherwise, he would not be as graceful as Lord Dog. A smile appeared on the giant's face, and he nodded. Then, his body suddenly crumbled. He transformed into countless bursts of flames that surged in all directions. Under the suppression of such scorching flames, all of the violent auras in the hidden dragon mystery realm completely disappeared. A mere first heaven celestial king was nothing more than trash before an eighth heaven celestial king. Thus, the auras that they had left behind were naturally also easily erased. 10 days later, the Empress let out a long cry. Under the boost of her celestial king-tier power, she had already pushed open the door to the third severance. She began to transcend her tribulation. Amidst the devastating lightning, she slashed out a third saber toward heaven and earth, enraging heaven and earth. However, the heavenly Tao also had its own regulations, so it quickly calmed down and disappeared. The Empress didn't even have time to say anything before the large black dog pointed a finger at the heart of the flames. He channeled a portion of his power into the Empress, forcing her to sit down again and accept the transformation of the celestial flames. She was a divine fetus in the first place, so the transformation this time wasn't to give her a divine fetus of flames. Instead, it was to improve on her original foundation, making her divine fetus even more powerful. The large black dog clasped his hands behind his back, and his expression became unusually serious for the first time. What we lack the most is always time. If the tide of darkness surges over, will this brat be able to mature in time? He murmured. Those old monsters don't have any ambition, and they don't want to suppress the darkness. All they do is stir up trouble and infighting among themselves. We definitely can't allow them to discover the existence of this brat. Otherwise, our plan of hundreds of millions of years will go up in smoke. Brat, you mustn't die. Although your future path is destined to be incredibly difficult, and you can only walk it alone with the entire world as your enemy, only you will be able to walk to the end. Because you are the only hope left behind by the heavenly venerate. Ling Han couldn't hear these words. At this moment, all of his attention was focused on battling with the power of flames. He was guiding the power of flames into his body, causing them to unleash their intended effects. However, this kind of transformation and improvement was incredibly slow. Thinking about it, Gu Daoyi had only managed to become a divine fetus after 10 lifetimes. Although the might of a celestial king was being displayed now, it still couldn't be accomplished in a single step. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. It was almost the 10th year since Ling Han had entered this place, and the blazing heart finally began to dim. This was happening very quickly. It had just begun to dim, and after a mere 3 days, it had completely stopped shining. A gust of wind blew past, and the blazing heart was also reduced to ashes. Everything that had once belonged to the heavenly fire's celestial king had disappeared. It was just like how he had originally been nurtured by heaven and earth, and now he had also completely returned to heaven and earth. Ling Han and the Empress simultaneously opened their eyes before standing up. The peak stage of the third severance. Although the essence of a celestial king was mainly used to transform and improve their bodies, even a shred of it could be used to increase their cultivation level. This was also an astonishing result, allowing them to easily reach the peak stage of the third severance. However, if they wanted to unleash the fourth severance, even celestial king-tier techniques couldn't replace it. They could only rely on their own comprehension. This was also why the large black dog wanted the Empress to advance to the third severance first. Otherwise, he would have wasted this essence for nothing. Brat, behave yourself in the future, and don't cause too much trouble. Otherwise, Grandpa Dog will be ashamed to be associated with you. The large black dog waved his paw and said, "All right, I've already completed my mission. Now, it's time to fulfill my wish from many years ago." He took a step forward, and it was as if he were flying. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared without a trace. Chapter 1845. The large black dog left, looking incredibly carefree. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh as he watched him disappear. This large black dog had reappeared, and who knew how many people would die at his hands. He would mourn for these people for now. He exchanged a smile with the Empress, and then also set off. "My divine fetus has become even more powerful," the Empress said. After being tempered by the celestial king tier flames, her divine fetus had improved further. Although she could still only form 9 doppelgangers, the battle prowess of each doppelganger was many times stronger than before. Moreover, although she hadn't transformed into a physique of fire, she had still obtained benefits related to the regulations of fire. Her physique had become intimate with fire, and the fire origin of heaven and earth was at her fingertips. The strength of Celestials lay in the use of regulations, directly using the great Tao to crush their opponents. Thus, no matter how many Genesis tier stars they could only be crushed by severing mundane tiers. Regulations were superior to power. However, regulations also needed to be used, and there was a process of forming battle prowess. The closer one was to the great Tao, the faster they would be able to use regulations. It was possible that 2 people might be at the same cultivation level, but if one side used regulations faster, they might be able to insta-kill the other. Thus, when the large black dog said that Ling Han could only be ranked below average among true prodigies, he wasn't deliberately trying to discourage Ling Han. Now, the Empress could use regulations of fire with incredible ease and speed. She was faster than those at the same cultivation level, and the power she used was greater. "What about you?" the Empress asked. Ling Han smiled. Boom, bursts of flames soared from his body, and his body actually completely turned into flames. "I've formed a fire divine fetus. Apart from being more intimate with regulations of fire, I can also merge with the great Tao of fire and temporarily borrow battle prowess." Generally speaking, divine fetuses were all like this. Firstly, they were intimate with regulations, and secondly, they could use regulations that surpassed their cultivation level. However, this definitely couldn't last for long, and sometimes they would have to pay a huge price. The Empress was very curious and asked, "What level can your strongest strike reach now?" Ling Han thought for a moment and said, "Even if Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng come back to life, I can kill them with a single strike." Of course, this was the battle prowess that he borrowed after merging with the great Tao of fire. The Empress smiled sweetly. The stronger Ling Han was, the happier she would naturally be. At this moment, Ling Han also completely understood that the large black dog had indeed not deceived him. There were super prodigies who were far more powerful than him in the celestial realm. Putting everything else aside, just the closeness to the laws alone was enough to widen the gap between the two's combat strength by an unknown amount. The foundation of a 7th, 8th, or 9th heaven celestial king was extremely shocking. After countless epics and countless treasures, it was completely capable of creating the strongest genius in the world. "Then let's have a match." Ling Han was full of heroism. Ever since he had started from the small world, he had trampled over countless geniuses. There would be no exception in the future. The Empress was also brimming with confidence. She was a divine fetus in the first place, and now that she had received a massive boost, she wouldn't lose to a true supreme prodigy. Now that there was no more mountain to descend, they returned to the canyon and saw that the people here had all been evacuated. It was empty. Although the baleful aura was gone, everyone didn't know what was going on. They felt that the 10-year period was almost up, so they began to evacuate. Who would dare to risk their lives? Ling Han and the Empress didn't linger, and they continued to head out of the mystery realm. They were extremely fast, and after a few days, they had caught up with the last group of people that had left. Then they caught up with the second group, and then the third group. When they walked out of the mystery realm, they were almost ahead of half of the people that had left. At this moment, there was a commotion outside the mystery realm. Some people were happy, and there were naturally people who were worried. Those who were happy were naturally because their clansmen had walked out of the mystery realm with blood dragon stones. Those who were worried were naturally because their clansmen hadn't come out yet, and they were worried that they had died in there. Something big has happened, someone immediately shouted. A supreme villain has appeared in the mystery realm this time, and he has killed many holy sons and holy daughters. That's right. Qian Zhao Tian, Bei Xianming Beiyu Xiong, and the others have all been killed by that villain. That villain is called Ling Han. Very quickly, Ling Han's great name spread throughout the mystery realm, and all of the forces learned of his deeds. For example, the Qianzhao clan and the lunar sect. Although they didn't really believe that their successors and holy sons had been killed by Ling Han, they gradually believed it when they heard everyone say the same thing. Moreover, Ling Han hadn't come out yet. In the instant that Ling Han and the Empress walked out of the mystery realm, a terrifying pressure instantly swept over them. At least 100 elites appeared, blocking their path. Did you kill Chen Zhaoyang? Did you kill Beiyu Xiong? Did you kill him? These were all dividing soul tier elites, and they all radiated a murderous aura at this moment. Even severing mundane tier grand elders would tremble with pressure. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "That should be the case. I don't have so much time and effort to remember the names of trash." Why, you're too arrogant. These dividing soul tier elites were all enraged. A mere peak stage third severance actually dared to act so impudently before them? Which one of them couldn't kill Ling Han 100 times with a casual wave of their hand? "Ignorant junior, since you've admitted it, then you can go die," said one of the dividing soul realm experts from the Qianzhao family. His name was Chen Zhaoyu, and in a 3-star power, the dividing soul realm was an absolute powerhouse. He was extremely enraged. Ling Han had actually dared to kill the successor of the Qianzhao clan. This was a provocation to the Qianzhao clan. A mere third severance. How did he dare to do this? He still didn't know that Qian Zhaoyang had also died at Ling Han's hands. Otherwise, he would definitely have exploded with rage. It wasn't easy to nurture a successor. Who knew how much time and resources it would take? Now that he had killed 2 of them, it was a huge blow to the Qianzhao clan. "Let me do it," an elite from the Beiyu clan said. He was also seething with rage. "Let me do it," another person shouted. All of them were fighting to kill Ling Han. "Wait!" Shua! A figure flew over, exuding a supreme aura that could suppress the heavens. Even the dividing soul tier elites couldn't help but retreat. Immortal Palace tier. Lord Fu Yen. The dividing soul tier elites all bowed respectfully when they heard this person. Immortal Palace tier elites could be regarded as elites no matter where they were. In fact, they would be highly valued even in Celestial King tier forces. This Immortal Palace tier elite was none other than Fu Yen. He had come here under Fu Shenbing's instructions to ensure Ling Han's safety. Of course, the elites of the Rock Palace had also come here, and they would definitely be able to ensure Ling Han's safety. However, he had stepped forward first, so he naturally wanted to curry favor with the Rock Palace. How could a Celestial King tier force not be awesome? Fu Yen was incredibly dignified. Although he had come here to curry favor, he still felt an immense sense of superiority in front of these dividing soul tier elites. He raised his hand slightly, indicating that they could dispense with the formalities. He was putting on an imposing manner. "May I ask why Lord Fu Yen has stopped us?" The dividing soul tier elites asked. Although they were inferior to Fu Yen, the forces behind them weren't inferior to the Fu clan. Thus, there was no need for them to cower. Moreover, the battleship was floating in the sky, so it could definitely be used as an Immortal Palace tier elite. Reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 1846. Fu Yen sighed in his mind. To be honest, he naturally didn't want to become enemies with so many 3-star forces. The Fu clan wasn't some top-tier 3-star force. Putting aside everything else, just the lunar sect alone was enough to beat them to a pulp. However, in order to curry favor with the Rock Palace, he definitely couldn't reveal this tiger skin. Otherwise, it would be far too insincere. The more difficult it was for him to protect Ling Han, the more it would demonstrate the Fu clan's determination, right? Fu Yen naturally didn't know that the Zai clan and the Thundercloud Palace hadn't received the news yet. Otherwise, he would definitely be screaming that he had been fucked over. If he didn't become enemies with two Celestial King tier forces, what was he? Unfortunately, he didn't know. Thus, he was completely focused on protecting Ling Han's safety and sucking up to the Rock Palace. He clasped his hands behind his back, a dignified expression on his face, and calmly said, "Listen to my advice. Don't touch a single hair on this brat's head." What? The dividing soul tier elites were all stunned, and some even doubted their own ears. That's right, you Fu Yen are indeed incredibly powerful here. However, more importantly, the Fu clan isn't an overlord that can suppress the entire world. Not only is it a 3-star force, but it's also below average. Where did your courage come from? If we join forces, I guarantee that the Fu clan will instantly be annihilated. To say nothing of anything else, would you be able to block the combined attack of their battleships? Even Ling Han and the Empress were slightly astonished. Hadn't they drawn a clear line between themselves and Fu Gaoyan? Why would Fu Yen step forward to protect them now? Moreover, it seemed like he was willing to pay any price. Have you taken the wrong medicine? However, although Ling Han had initially planned to shake them off by entering the Black Tower, since Fu Yen had stepped forward, he would have to deal with the situation first. Lord Fu Yen, are you sure you want to do this? Qian Zhaoyu asked, a cold expression on his face. He was indeed weaker than the Fu clan, but the Qianzhao clan wasn't weaker than the Fu clan in the slightest. There was no need for him to lower his head. Moreover, there were many victims here, and the Fu clan had incurred the wrath of the masses. Even ants could bite an elephant to death, let alone a pack of tigers. The Fu clan definitely couldn't withstand a single blow. Fu Yan's expression darkened and he said, "Are you threatening me?" Although he was under immense pressure, how could an immortal palace tier elite be challenged by just anyone? Regardless of whether I did the right thing or not, since you're only at the Soul Realm, you can only be submissive in front of me. Lord Fu Yen, do you know what this brat has done? The elite of the lunar sect asked coldly. His name was Zhao Lingfeng. Fu Yan's heart jolted. It must be known that these people did not come from a single power. Rather, they came from at least several dozen powers. What the hell did this kid do? In his heart, he wished he could slap Ling Han a few times, but his face remained expressionless as he said, "I really didn't know. This brat killed my sect's saint child," shouted Zhao Lingfeng. Ka Fu Yen felt as if his heart had been struck by a heavy blow. If it weren't for his astonishing willpower, his expression would have definitely changed and he would have cried out in alarm. "You're too much of a troublemaker." The lunar sect was one of the top 3 major forces in this area. If they really mobilized their full strength, they would definitely be able to destroy the Fu clan. Yet, you actually killed their holy son? This, how audacious. "And the heirs of our clan," Qian Zhaoyu said in a sinister voice. He had also just received news that not only had Qian Zhao Tian been killed by Ling Han, but even Qian Zhao Yang had also been killed. This was a complete provocation to the Qian Zhao clan. Thus, regardless of who stepped forward, Qian Zhaoyu wouldn't back down. After all, he was representing the Qian Zhao clan, a 3-star force. No matter how strong Fu Yan's willpower was, he couldn't help but grimace upon hearing this. Fine, not only had he offended the lunar sect, but he had also offended the Qian Zhao clan as well. Moreover, he had even killed 2 of their heirs. Were you trying to end their bloodline? And the holy son of our sect. And the heir of our clan. And the dividing soul tier elites all spoke up, denouncing Ling Han's crimes. These were the only words that lingered in Fu Yan's mind at this moment. He finally recalled that Ling Han had dared to wage war against the Ding clan and the Shao clan when he had still been extremely weak. In fact, he had even destroyed the physical body of a prodigy of the Han clan. He had completely offended the Ding clan and the Shao clan. This person was extremely audacious, and he definitely had a criminal record. His ability to cause trouble was simply unimaginable. Grand Ancestor, oh, Grand Ancestor, aren't you pushing me into a pit of fire by asking me to protect this brat? How can I withstand your attacks with my tiny arms and legs? Fu Yen was already numb as he listened on. He was confident that there was nothing else that could move him. No matter what this brat has done, no one is allowed to touch him, Fu Yen said through gritted teeth. He was also slightly expectant in his heart. After all, this was the only way he could display the value of the Fu clan. I've taken so many risks, so your rock palace should at least accept this, right? A female rider in the distance asked respectfully, "Milord, are we not going to act?" The female rider of the rock palace waved her hand and said, "Let these clowns perform for a while longer. In any case, we've already found the person, so there's no need to rush." Understood. Who knew what expression would appear on Fu Yan's face if he heard this? He had worked so hard, yet he had been treated like a clown. However, this was understandable. After all, did a mighty celestial king tier force need people like them to act as pawns? Moreover, how could the Rock Palace be an ordinary celestial king tier force? In their eyes, celestial kings below the fifth heaven were nothing to them. Thus, what was the point of the Fu clan's efforts? One could only say that the Fu clan's flattery had gone completely awry this time. The disparity in status was far too great. It was like a village chief trying to flatter the emperor, but would the emperor care? Upon hearing Fu Yan's words, the elites of the lunar sect and the others all exploded with fury. Are you fucking insane? If the Fu clan was a 4-star force, then they would have accepted it. However, they were all 3-star forces, and the Fu clan was only at the lower end of the rankings. Yet, they still dared to act so arrogantly? Is your Fu clan trying to ascend to the heavens? Lord Fu Yen, you have to understand that we represent 37 forces here. Which one of us is weaker than the Fu clan? An elite of the Beiyu clan couldn't help but remind Fu Yen. His words were naturally filled with threat. Fu Yen had already made up his mind, so he naturally wouldn't mind. Instead, he smiled and said, "You juniors, I'm actually doing this for your own good. Don't make a mistake." Upon hearing this, the elites couldn't help but erupt in fury. They were all cursing the old turtle in their minds. You killed our heir, and you didn't allow us to avenge him? Yet, you still say that you're doing this for our own good? Good your sister. Do you take us for fools? Now that Lord Fu is backing us, we naturally don't dare to do anything. However, can the Fu clan withstand the fury of so many forces? Zhao Lingfeng said in a menacing voice. To say nothing of the other forces, just the lunar sect alone would be enough to destroy the Fu clan. Fu Yen waved his sleeve and said, "What do you have? Our Fu clan will accept it." These words were said in a heroic and domineering manner. Can you accept it? A cold voice asked. A figure descended from the sky, radiating with an aura that wasn't any weaker than Fu Yan's. In fact, it was even significantly stronger. Reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 1848. Ling Han was already about to bring the Empress into the Black Tower. Against 2 immortal palace tier elites, he couldn't afford to have any hope of survival. Even if he channeled the indestructible Heaven Scroll, the only result would be that his physical body would immediately explode. Rising from the ashes wasn't a joke, and he would be injured every time he used it. Who's coming this time? He was also extremely confused. One had to realize that he didn't have any foundation in the celestial realm. He was like a poor child without parents, and he could only constantly strive to improve himself. Sun Zhen and Zai Ji were astonished. The other party hadn't even arrived, yet he had already blocked them with the power of regulations. How powerful was this person? Please show yourself, Sun Zhen said as he looked into the distance. A dragonhawk flapped its wings and flew over in an instant. It was 100 feet long, and if it spread its wings, it would be 100 feet wide. On the back of the dragonhawk sat a female knight. She was dressed in golden armor and had a head full of beautiful hair. She looked very heroic. There was also a group of dragonhawks behind her, and there was a female knight sitting on each dragonhawk. However, they were all dressed in silver armor. Scram! The female knight in golden armor reprimanded coldly. You've gone too far. Zai Ji was also extremely displeased. Who was he? He was from a celestial king tier force, and yet he dared to speak to him like this? The female knight in golden armor glanced at him. But she flicked her hand, and a whip appeared in her hand. She glared at Zai Ji, looking as if she would whip him if he dared to interrupt again. Zai Ji couldn't help but tremble with rage. Ever since he was young, when had he ever been looked down upon like this? Fine. Come, I want to experience your power. But Zai Ji hadn't even finished speaking when the female knight lashed out with her whip. This scene was far too terrifying. As the whip lashed out, countless immortal beasts appeared. However, they had all died in battle, and their bodies were riddled with wounds. This whip caused the entire heaven and earth to tremble, and it was as if the stars in the sky were about to fall. Zai Ji didn't even have time to be astonished, and he hurriedly raised his hand to block. But the whip lashed out, and his entire body slid back several thousand meters. The clothes on his arms were torn to shreds, and a long gash appeared on his arms, from which blood gushed out. He was an immortal palace tier elite, yet he had been wounded with a single strike. Sun Zhen couldn't help but feel astonished. It should be known that Zai Ji and him were both 5th secret elites. And coming from a celestial king tier force, which of them would have simple battle prowess? However, Zai Ji had been lightly wounded with a single strike, and this was enough to show the gap in power between the two of them. How should I address you? Asked Sun Zhen. The female knight frowned and pointed at Ling Han. I'm taking this person away. Anyone who tries to stop me will be killed. So domineering. Fu Yan's heart thumped wildly. Weren't they all from celestial king tier forces? Why was this person from the Rock Palace so powerful? Could it be that there was a huge disparity between celestial king tier forces? Did he do something wrong? He should have followed through. Ling Han was also very curious. He did not recognize this female knight at all, so why would she be willing to stand up for him and not hesitate to offend two great celestial king tier forces? Sir, this brat killed the heir of my Zai clan, as well as the holy son of the Thundercloud Palace. How could he possibly get away so easily? Zai Ji said in a menacing voice. He knew that the female knight's battle prowess was superior to his, but they still had a 4-star battleship. Was this something that an immortal palace tier cultivator could oppose? The female knight looked at Zai Ji coldly, her killing intent boiling. However, she still resisted the urge to attack in the end and said, "If you have any problems, you can come to my rock palace. No matter who you are, my rock palace will accept your challenge. Now all of you scram." Rock palace. Ling Han's mind instantly trembled. No wonder she was willing to stand up for him despite not knowing him. So it turned out that she was a member of the Rock Palace. "Where's Hunyeo? Is she here?" he hurriedly asked. A displeased expression spread across the female knight's face, and she said, "The young imperial empress title is Tianyun." Ling Han chuckled and said, "Hunyeo is not here?" The female knight's nose almost became crooked. "Is there something wrong with your brain? I already told you that the young imperial empress title is Tianyun, so why did you still mention Hunyeo? What a country bumpkin name." If she could, she really wanted to kill this person who had insulted the young imperial empress. However, when she thought of how much Hunyeo missed Ling Han, she only dared to think about it. "The young imperial empress still needs to cultivate, so she can't come," she said through gritted teeth. She forcefully suppressed her anger. Meanwhile, Zai Ji and Sun Zhen were confused. What the hell was this rock palace? The celestial realm was far too vast. Putting aside the fact that they were separated by a boundless sea, even if they were on the same continent, it would be completely impossible for them to find out if they were slightly further away. Perhaps the Purple River Celestial King and the Thundercloud Celestial King knew, but they might not necessarily tell their subordinates everything. Normally speaking, it was impossible for them to have any dealings with the Rock Palace. "So what if you're from the Rock Palace?" Zai Ji asked in displeasure. Could the Zai clan allow an heir to die for no reason? The female knight had already been suppressing her anger in the first place, and Zai Ji's words just so happened to be a direct provocation. "You're courting death," she rebuked coldly. Shwa. Another whip lashed out. This time, Zai Ji was prepared, and he hurriedly unleashed a celestial technique. A boundless aura surged out from his head and soared into the galaxy, transforming into a roaring white tiger. Then, it spat out a massive golden sword that slashed at the female knight. The whip lashed out, and its might had increased explosively by 100-fold compared to before. Zaiji was instantly horrified, yet he was completely unable to dodge. As the whip lashed out, starting from his head, his entire body was forcefully split into two halves. He still wanted to unleash a celestial technique to reassemble his body, yet a devastating destructive power swept over him. The two halves of his body exploded again, instantly turning into innumerable pieces. He was a mighty immortal palace tier elite, and a fifth secret elite at that, yet his body and spirit had been destroyed with a single strike. Instantly, everyone was so shocked that their scalps went numb. They felt a chill run down their spines, and cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. He was far too powerful, far too domineering. She had killed a fifth secret elite without any hesitation, and she had completely disregarded the fact that he was from a celestial king-tier clan. This rendered everyone speechless. Sun Zhen couldn't help but stumble back a few steps. Even his legs were trembling slightly, just like Fu Yan just then. Meanwhile, Fu Yan's mouth was wide open, and he was completely speechless. Back then, she had killed Han Luo without any hesitation. After all, he was only an immortal palace tier elite from a 3-star force. However, Zaiji was a member of a celestial king-tier force, and she had also killed him without any hesitation? Was she extremely daring, or was she extremely confident? What kind of existence was the Rock Palace among celestial king-tier forces? The female knight looked at Sun Zhen coldly. Although she was standing, she was completely arrogant. It was as if she would kill him if he dared to utter another word. What could Sun Zhen say? He obediently kept his mouth shut. He didn't want to die at all. However, he had already made a decision in his mind. When he returned to the battleship, he would definitely gather the cannons and blast this arrogant woman to death. The surroundings were deathly silent. This female knight was far too domineering, and even the immortal palace tier elites from celestial king tier forces couldn't do anything about it. Meanwhile, Lin Feng, Ting Sen, and Wei Nian's faces had all turned green. Ling Han actually had such a terrifying background. Fuck. You're clearly the heir of a celestial king tier force, so what are you pretending for? We're doomed now. Chapter 1849. Ling Han indeed hadn't planned to spare Lin Feng and the others. It was just that they had escaped quickly. Come, let's have a battle. I'll spare whoever can block 3 strikes from me. Ling Han strode toward Lin Feng and the others. Lin Feng and the others wanted to run, but the 9 silver-armored female knights surrounded them on their steeds. The 3 of them could only look pleadingly at the elites of their clans. However, these elites all turned their heads away, pretending that they hadn't seen them. What a joke! Even Zaiji had been insta-killed. They didn't want to die. Lin Feng and the others gritted their teeth and said, "Let's do it." They knew that they were definitely no match for Ling Han. However, blocking 3 strikes from him shouldn't be a problem. "Come at me together." "I'm in a hurry," Ling Han said calmly. Ling Han said calmly. 3 moves. As long as you can endure 3 moves, I'll treat you as heir and let you go. The 3 of them were naturally filled with confidence upon hearing this. Could it be that they couldn't block 3 strikes from Ling Han even if they teamed up? Did he really think that he was a god? The female knight in golden armor was quite interested. She clasped her hands behind her back and didn't urge Ling Han to leave. She naturally knew that the young empress was extremely infatuated with this man. The question was Ling Han worthy of the young empress? Thus, she wanted to know just how powerful Ling Han was. If he really was trash, she would rather be punished by the sect and be reduced to dust than be able to kill Ling Han so that he wouldn't harm the young empress. Lin Feng and the others smirked coldly in their minds upon seeing that Ling Han didn't take the initiative to attack. They exchanged a glance and weren't in a hurry to attack. Instead, they activated their most powerful techniques. The radiance of the great Tao surged from their bodies. As king tiers, their battle prowess naturally wasn't weak. In particular, They had already reached the peak stage of the fourth severance. They were practically invincible in the severing mundane tier. The three of them teamed up, and they only needed to block 3 strikes from Ling Han. They didn't believe that they couldn't do so. Since the female knight didn't say anything, the others naturally didn't dare to say or do anything. Even if some of them wanted to flatter her, they could only do so for now. At this time, Fu Gaoyun and the others had just come out of the secret realm, so they still didn't know what was going on. When they saw that Ling Han was going to fight again, they couldn't help but click their tongues in wonder. It was very strange. The elites of the lunar sect and the other great elites were clearly on the sidelines, so why didn't they make a move to capture Ling Han? Instead, they allowed him to battle Lin Fang and the others. Why is forefather Fu Yan here too? They hurriedly ran over, curious, and hurriedly asked. Then they were all dumbfounded. Fuck, Ling Han was actually the heir of a celestial king tier force? Fu Gaoyun's face was filled with bitterness. If he could withstand the pressure, this friendship would bring him endless benefits. However, at least he still maintained a certain level of friendship with Ling Han, which was a blessing in disguise. Meanwhile, Fu Xiaoyun was dejected. No wonder the Empress had said that she was not worthy of Ling Han. At first, she had still boasted that her status was noble, but now, compared to Ling Han, she was actually the one who knew how far behind. Meanwhile, Cheng Zhong and the others were filled with regret. They had once had such a powerful thigh placed right in front of them, yet they hadn't hugged it. If they could do it all over again, they would want to say, "Please let me hug it tightly. Has this guy really not had his asshole penetrated? Otherwise, why hasn't his hair grown back yet?" Situ Xiaozhen was still conflicted over this question. It was unknown what was going on in her brain. Ling Han suddenly felt his ass clench, causing him to feel a chill run down his spine. He couldn't help but shiver. Die! Lin Fang and the other two moved at the same time, each unleashing a powerful move that blasted towards Ling Han. Since they had taken the initiative to attack, their chances of surviving 3 attacks would naturally be higher. It was better to attack than to defend. They had to take the initiative. Of course, they definitely didn't dare to kill Ling Han. They didn't even dare to severely wound him. The female knight in golden armors might had already struck fear into their hearts. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face, and a terrifying aura burst forth from his body. The expressions of the dividing soul tier elites all changed, and expressions of astonishment appeared on their faces. This aura was extremely powerful. Although it wasn't at the dividing soul tier, it had far surpassed the peak stage of the 4th severance. Most importantly, Ling Han's cultivation level was only at the peak stage of the 3rd severance. How could he unleash such a powerful attack? Even Sun Jin felt a chill run down his spine. He had initially thought that Ling Han had used some despicable method to kill Luo Changfeng. However, judging from the current situation, it seemed like Ling Han didn't even need to launch a sneak attack. The female knight in golden armor was also slightly astonished. Although Ling Han's strength was still inferior to Hu Niu's, the Rock Palace was a 9th heaven celestial king tier force. Just how astonishing was their foundation? They had used the power of an entire sect to nurture Hu Niu. Meanwhile, Ling Han was like a rootless duckweed. He could only rely on himself for everything. However, he was only slightly inferior to Hu Niu. This was truly astounding to her. No wonder the young imperial empress missed him so much. An outstanding talent. Although he still couldn't compare to the young imperial empress, at least he wouldn't be too difficult. Boom! Lin Fang and the others charged over. Their auras were so powerful that they could annihilate heaven and earth. Ling Han shook his head. He activated his fire divine fetus and fused it with the regulations of fire. Then he unleashed a strike that far surpassed his cultivation level. Boom! A dazzling burst of flames surged, creating a massive explosion. The power of regulations of fire surged, and the elites all moved to block the overflowing attack. Otherwise, it would affect the juniors of their own clans. The power of this strike was definitely at the pinnacle of the severing mundane tier. Meanwhile, the seniors of the Lin clan, Teng clan, and Wei clan wore bitter expressions on their faces. Under this kind of strike, It was questionable whether Lin Feng and the others would even have a piece of flesh left, let alone survive. Sure enough, when the flames disappeared, Lin Feng and the others also disappeared forever. Even with Ling Han's normal battle prowess, he would be able to quickly deal with them. Moreover, he had unleashed his divine fetus ultimate strike. Even he was panting slightly. If he still couldn't insta-kill them, then it would be a complete waste of an 8th heaven celestial king's millions and millions of years of effort. Ling Han clapped his hands and turned around. He then smiled at the female knight in golden armor, and said, "Senior, can we depart now?" If he had to cross the boundless sea by himself, it would be extremely dangerous. However, since the female knight in golden armor had crossed the sea, she was naturally very confident. If he followed her to the western celestial realm, he would be absolutely safe. He didn't want to suddenly die just when he was about to see his wife, children, and mother. The female knight in golden armor pondered for a moment before saying, "All right." She swept her gaze over the crowd, and everyone lowered their gazes. They didn't dare to meet her gaze. Even Sun Jin was no exception. She was also a 5th secret cultivator, yet her battle prowess was far superior to his. They couldn't compare at all. Right now, he only had one thought in his mind, and that was to return to the battleship as soon as possible. Then he would fire his cannons and kill this woman. "You're plotting against us. You deserve to die." The female knight in golden armor's eyes suddenly flashed with killing intent as she swatted a palm towards Sun Jin. Sun Jin was both shocked and enraged. "I only have some fucking thoughts right now, and I haven't even put them into action yet. How can you attack me like this?" However, the palm had already reached him, and he had to react. Otherwise, he would just be waiting for death. He didn't dare to parry, and could only retreat as he said, "Please don't misunderstand." Chapter 1850. The female knight in golden armor didn't care about Sun Jin at all. She continued to attack with her palm, clearly intending to kill Sun Jin. Sun Jin roared in fury, yet he didn't dare to exchange blows with the female knight in golden armor. He hurriedly turned tail and fled. He wanted to return to the battleship. At that time, he would be able to take back the initiative. The lightning revolved around his body, making him look like a god. However, he fled without a trace. In the face of his life, he had to put his dignity aside. Moreover, fighting meant certain death. That was courage, not true bravery. Not only did the regulations of lightning possess terrifying destructive power, but they were also extremely fast. Sun Jin soared into the sky at an astonishing speed. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived in the air above his battleship. An expression of joy involuntarily appeared on his face. It was time for him to counterattack. But right at this moment, he suddenly felt something tighten around his ankle. Then, a powerful force pulled him down rapidly. There was a whip wrapped around his ankle. His body plummeted at an astonishing speed. "No," he roared in his mind. However, he was completely unable to resist this power. He crashed heavily into the ground, creating a massive crater. Sun Jin staggered out of the crater. He hadn't suffered a heavy fall, but the female knight in golden armor had unleashed her power of regulations. As such, his legs were extremely weak. "Yes, lady, I'm still a member of a celestial king tier force. If you kill me, it'll only bring you endless trouble," he said. His words sounded like a threat, yet he was actually begging for his life. The female knight in golden armor said proudly, "The Thundercloud Palace? The Thundercloud King is only a first heaven celestial king. In our Rock Palace, he wouldn't even be able to rank within the top 100. If it weren't for the fact that the Rock Palace was constantly fighting against their mortal enemies, they would have had over 1,000 celestial kings at their peak. Of course, they only had 2 9th heaven celestial kings, and one of them had already died. Moreover, their Grand Elder had also been injured by the Great Tao. Right now, they could only wait for Hunyo to rise and fill this gap. Otherwise, once their Grand Elder passed away, even the powerful Rock Palace could collapse overnight. However, even though their current situation was dire, a mere first heaven celestial king wanted to threaten a sect like the Rock Palace? What a joke! Meanwhile, Sun Jin was completely dumbfounded. Not only him, but everyone else who heard the female knight's words also had the same thought. Are you fucking kidding me? Everyone knew that celestial kings were the strongest in the world, but it was precisely because of this that the number of celestial kings was pitifully small, and any one of them was an invincible overlord. From the Zai clan to the Thundercloud Palace. Countless years had passed, but which clan had a holy son or successor who had become a celestial king? Not one. From this, one could see how difficult it was to become an immortal king. You have over 100 immortal kings in your clan, aren't you boasting a little too much? You dare to humiliate my king? You are destined to die a horrible death. Sun Jin coldly spoke. He could die, but the Thundercloud Immortal King couldn't be humiliated. This was the pillar of support for everyone in the Thundercloud Hall. It's just a fact, the female knight in golden armor said calmly. She lashed out with her whip again, and it was as if a mountain was collapsing and a tidal wave was crashing down. Layer after layer of laws lit up in an orderly manner. Sun Jin fled. However, even though he could unleash extreme speed with his thunder element regulations, he was still struck repeatedly. Although his vital points weren't hit, he was still riddled with wounds. In the end, he couldn't take it anymore. With a long roar, endless light surged from his body, making him seem like a sun. This was the secret palace glowing. It was using this method to increase his combat strength, elevating him to the extreme for this battle. He was going all out. He had no choice but to go all out. The female knight in golden armor didn't seem to care at all. She casually lashed out with her whip. Even though she was incredibly calm, it was like a cat toying with a mouse. Sun Jin didn't have the slightest bit of temper. The difference in their strength was far too great. They weren't even on the same level. In the end, Sun Jin's secret palace was completely depleted, and his battle prowess was greatly reduced. He was whipped to death by the female knight. Another secret realm elite had fallen. Everyone was trembling, and no one dared to make a sound. Ziwan, hand over your mount, the female knight in golden armor said to Ling Han without even turning her head. Yes, milady. A female knight in silver armor immediately dismounted from her dragonhawk and rode with another person. Let's go, the female knight in golden armor said to Ling Han. She still believed that Ling Han wasn't worthy of her young imperial empress. In fact, no one was worthy of her young imperial empress. Ling Han chuckled and leaped onto the dragonhawk with the empress. The back of this immortal beast was extremely large, and one could even place a table on it. Let's go, the female knight in golden armor shouted, and 10 dragonhawks took off at the same time. They instantly became a small blackta. The dragonhawks were extremely fast, and they were also extremely stable. There wasn't even the slightest bit of turbulence. Ling Han held the empress in his arms, and he allowed the gales to blow against him. With his current strength, he naturally didn't need to worry about them. The female knight in golden armor was slightly indignant. Her young imperial empress talked about this bastard every day, yet he actually dared to hug another woman right in front of her. How beautiful! Even she had to admit that the empress was as beautiful as a celestial maiden. She wasn't inferior to her young imperial empress in the slightest. This bastard? How is he so lucky? These dragonhawks were only at the severing mundane tier, but they were definitely very useful for long-distance travel. They had flown over thousands of mountains and rivers in just 3 days. At this speed, they would probably be able to reach the seaside in half a year's time. The celestial realm was far too vast. The empress quickly entered into the Black Tower. She was already at the peak stage of the 3rd severance, and she hoped to advance to the 4th severance as soon as possible. Then she would advance to become a true monarch tier. 5th severance. If she couldn't advance to the 5th severance, she wouldn't be able to contend against the descendants of forces at or above the 7th heaven's celestial king tier. As such, Ling Han could only wait outside. If he entered into the Black Tower again, who knew where he would be blown to? Thus, it was best to stay put. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. During this period, everything had been calm and peaceful. Nothing had happened. The female knight in golden armor was also cold and indifferent toward Ling Han. She wasn't willing to say anything, but she still told Ling Han that her surname was Guan, and he could call her Commander Guan. As for what her name was, she didn't say, and Ling Han didn't ask either. On this day, the weather was calm and sunny. In different parts of the celestial realm, elites would use their great power to create suns and moons, forcefully dividing day and night. Here, there was a bright red sun hanging in the sky. Generally speaking, only ascending origin tier elites could do this. Ling Han stared at the red sun. There was a powerful regulations of fire within the sun, and this caused his divine fetus of fire to become slightly restless. He really wanted to extract the regulations from the sun and transform them into his own comprehension. Of course, this was only a thought. To say nothing of whether he could withstand the fury of an ascending origin tier elite, even if they allowed him to refine the sun, he still couldn't extract the regulations of this sun with his current cultivation level. The gap between their cultivation levels was far too great. Even if he was a divine fetus of fire, he would only be instantly incinerated. This sun was incomparably large, and it was comparable to a city. Moreover, just how large was a city in the celestial realm? Suddenly, a dark cloud surged over from the distance. It was like a massive tsunami. In the blink of an eye, the sun was engulfed by the dark cloud. The scorching light only flickered for a moment before immediately disappearing. After another instant, a massive explosion occurred in the dark cloud, and a red-hot wave surged over from within the dark cloud. This sun had been destroyed. Chapter 1852. Lord Commander, we've been searching for more than half a year, haven't we? A female knight in silver asked hesitantly. Ever since they'd been separated from Ling Han, they'd been searching for his whereabouts. They'd long since come to the conclusion that Ling Han was definitely done for under such a ferocious attack. However, how much did Hunyo care about Ling Han? They naturally couldn't give up without even looking. Thus, they'd been painstakingly searching these days. However, they all knew in their hearts that Ling Han was definitely dead. It was just that none of them brought this up first. Commander Guan was silent for a moment. She took out some materials and constructed a small formation. Then she took out a pitch-black stone. There was a pained expression on her face as she gritted her teeth and placed it in the formation. Instantly, the formation lit up like a mirror. Then, a figure appeared. She was incomparably beautiful, yet filled with spirituality. The moment she appeared, she immediately jumped over. Did you find Nyo's Ling Han? Seeing Hunyo's excited expression, Commander Guan couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. She paused for a moment before saying, "Young Imperial Empress, I've indeed found Ling Han." "Where's Ling Han? Where's Ling Han?" Hunyo looked left and right. She didn't have the demeanor of a ninth heaven celestial king tier heiress at all. It was all this man's fault. Thankfully, this guy was dead. Although the young Imperial Empress would feel sad for a while, it would eventually pass. "Young Imperial Empress, we encountered a battle between two elites on the way back and were affected. Ling Han and Ling Han were unfortunately killed," Commander Guan said through gritted teeth. Hunyo was stunned at first. Then she flew into a rage and stomped her foot. "Nonsense! How could Nyo's Ling Han die? Hurry up and find Ling Han for Nyo. Otherwise, I'll throw you to feed the big black bear." Commander Guan's forehead was covered with sweat. This person was already dead, so how could they find him? Hunyo, however, firmly believed it. She knew of the existence of the Black Tower, and after she became truly sensible, she even went to investigate the origins of the Black Tower and guessed some clues. She definitely did not believe that Ling Han would die so easily. In any case, Ling Han isn't dead. Go and find him for Nyo. If you don't find him, don't come back," she said angrily. Then she changed her mind. "No, Nyo wants to find him personally. I'll leave it to you guys. Nyo won't be at ease. And that lousy expert, wait for Nyo. Nyo will beat you up." "Young Palace Master, you can't." It wasn't just Commander Guan, even the female knights were trying to dissuade her. The young Hall Master's trip was too important. What if his enemies found out and killed him midway? "Don't worry, young Palace Master. We will definitely find Ling Han. Commander Guan half knelt on the ground and vowed solemnly. Even if Ling Han really died, she was prepared to wander outside for hundreds of thousands of years. No matter what, she had to wait until the young palace master's cultivation was successful before she left. However, Hunyo shook her head angrily and said, "No, no. You people are too troublesome. Nyo wants to find him personally." Commander Guan and the others all began to wipe away their sweat. In terms of troublesome, it seemed like this young palace master ranked first. However, although their cultivation levels were higher, the hierarchy of the rock palace was strict. The title of young palace master didn't mean that she was the successor. Rather, it was because Hunyo's cultivation level was still a bit weak at present that she had the title of young palace master. She would definitely become the palace master in the future, so she had no choice. Did they dare to say that to Hunyo? The Grand Elder probably wouldn't allow the young palace master to act recklessly, right? They all thought this in their minds and didn't try to persuade her any further. "I'll go and find him again. Since the young palace master has already said so, I'll just treat this as a last resort." Ling Han walked slowly. The Empress was currently in seclusion in order to advance to the fourth severance. Even with the help of the reincarnation tree, this would probably take an incredibly long time. It was impossible for her to come out in a short period of time. How can I find Commander Guan and the others? The probability of him coincidentally finding a single person in such a vast celestial realm was close to zero. Thus, he had to make himself more conspicuous and create some commotion. In this way, Commander Guan and the others should be able to hear the news and come over. However, the prerequisite was that they believed that he was still alive. Then I'll first go to the nearest city. If Commander Guan's intelligence isn't wrong, she should also be able to figure out that the probability of encountering him in the wilderness is far too small. If I go to a city, I can still ask for information. However, this place had already been razed to the ground, and he couldn't find anyone to ask where the nearest city was. He could only randomly choose a direction to walk in. This walk went on for 7 days. He was still walking in forests and grasslands, and there was no sign of a city in sight. And his nose twitched slightly, and he smelled an alluring fragrance. As a foodie, and more so as an alchemy prodigy, he could confirm that this was the hind leg of a 3-stone deer. At least 13 spices had been added, and 3 of them were extremely high-grade medicinal ingredients. Involuntarily, he followed the fragrance. Ling Han walked out of a small forest and saw a flat ground in front of him. There was a man sitting on a rock, and there was a bonfire in front of him. On top of the bonfire, there was a piece of barbecued meat that emitted an alluring fragrance. When the man heard the commotion, he turned around. His figure was tall and slender, and even though he was sitting, he was still taller than ordinary people by half a head. His features were extremely handsome, and he had a calm and steady aura about him. In terms of age, he was at most in his early 20s. Naturally, in the celestial realm, age didn't have much meaning. However, this man's life force was incomparably vigorous, and his age couldn't be too old. It was just that he clearly didn't expect Ling Han to appear here, and a trace of astonishment appeared on his face. "My dear friend, can you share some food with me?" Ling Han shamelessly asked. To a foodie, being friendly with others was a necessary skill. The young man was startled at first, but then a smile appeared on his face. He casually waved his hand and said, "Please." He sent out a signal without anyone noticing. Ling Han saw this, but he didn't pay any attention to him. He sat down and took out a small knife. He cut off a piece of barbecued meat and began to eat it in large bites. After that, he praised, "Delicious." The young man smiled faintly and took out a jug of wine. That smile was filled with deep meaning. Ling Han received it and drank it in large gulps. After eating some more barbecued meat, he felt all the pores on his body open up. "Young master." In that instant, 7 people ran over from different directions and half knelt in greeting to the young man. But when it came to Ling Han, they couldn't help but reveal expressions of shock. The young man's surname was Lu, and his name was Lu Xianming. He looked at Ling Han, and his expression gradually became cold. He said, "Sir, there's no need to act anymore. Where's Chen-Si? Did you kill him or knock him unconscious? He had rested here for a while, and his 8 subordinates had spread out, each responsible for guarding a direction. But now that Ling Han had appeared, and Chen-Si, who was responsible for guarding that direction, hadn't returned, it was easy to imagine what had happened. Ling Han was astonished, and then he deeply reflected on himself. He must have been carrying a halo of trouble. He was only smelling the aroma and eating the meat. Was there a need to torment him so much? Fuck. Chapter 1853. Ling Han cracked a smile and said, "Don't misunderstand, I'm just passing by, and didn't see anyone. I'll leave after eating." Lu Xianming smirked coldly and said, "Since you're so stubborn, take." He still wanted to know what happened to his subordinates, so he didn't give the order to kill Ling Han. The 7 subordinates received the order, and immediately surrounded Ling Han. Ling Han didn't stop eating and said, "I really don't have any ill intentions. Your people might have seen a pretty girl passing by, and followed her all the way. What does it have to do with me? Don't be so talkative." The 7 people charged over, all drawing their weapons, their killing intent soaring. Ling Han was indifferent. These people were only in the severing mundane tier, and putting aside the fact that they were only normal, even if they were king tiers, or even emperor tiers, he wouldn't be the slightest bit afraid. The 7 surrounded him, and Ling Han only dodged. After all, he had eaten their food, so he had to be courteous. Furthermore, he also discovered that he had been tricked. Chen-Si had definitely been killed, and even if he wasn't dead, he wouldn't be much better off, so he could walk here smoothly. However, the person who had done this obviously didn't have good intentions towards Lu Xianming, and deliberately let him come here. Their intentions couldn't be more obvious. He was bait, used to attract the attention of these 7 guards, and then, a flash of sword light suddenly rose up from the ground, raising a sword chi that was as long as 30,000 meters. The murderous aura spread out, as if a primordial beast had been born. This was an assassin, and he used some unknown method to get close. Even Ling Han didn't discover that the other had been lying in ambush here, and took advantage of this perfect opportunity to launch an attack. Lu Xianming humphed, an expression of, as expected, appearing on his face. One was attracting attention in the open, and the other was launching a sneak attack in the dark. Such a trick could be hidden from him? Shua, a sword attacked. There was a deep green mark on the blade that had been dyed with a strong poison, and was about to form a symbol of great Tao. Not to mention being cut, even a touch of the skin would be fatal. Lu Xianming moved, and with a ding, a crescent blade appeared in his hand, blocking this attack. The regulations formed a great collision, and instantly, like a tsunami, surged out in all directions. Lu Xianming couldn't help but retreat. His opponent's battle prowess was very strong, at least not much inferior to his. Just at this moment, Shua, another flash of sword light shot out from underground, and a figure also appeared, stabbing toward Lu Xianming's back with a military sword. The timing of this attack was really perfect. It was the moment when Lu Xianming's defense was at its weakest. Lu Xianming did not panic at all. He pointed with his left hand, and wang, a halo of light immediately appeared, forming a shield around him. Bam! The sword light slashed down, but was blocked by the light shield. But with a roar from the second sneak attacker, the sword will instantly soared 100 times. Crack! Countless cracks appeared on the light shield, and then it shattered with a loud bang. Scram! Lu Xianming had already caught his breath, and the crescent blade in his hand slashed out. The second sneak attacker lightly tapped his feet and retreated, dodging the attack. Shua, a third flash of sword light appeared. This time, it shot out from Lu Xianming's left side, and a third sneak attacker scuttled out. This time, Lu Xianming's expression really changed. It happened again and again and again. Although the previous 2 sneak attacks took a long time to describe, in reality, they had happened almost at the same time. Even if Lu Xianming was a genius in martial art, he had still used up all of his methods in these 2 sharp sneak attacks. Now, his origin power had not yet recovered, and he had used up all of his protective methods, but a fatal sword was stabbing toward him. He knew what kind of sword this was. It was smeared with soul-shattering grass. As long as he was stabbed, not only would his physical body explode, even his spirit would immediately decay. It was incomparably vicious. Would he be unable to escape this calamity again? As the sword light blazed, it had already arrived at his chest. A trace of bitterness surfaced in Lu Xianming's heart. Born of the same root, why torment each other? I don't care if you love each other and kill each other, but you can't use me as a shield and take the blame for you. Ling Han's figure flashed, and he was already blocking in front of Lu Xianming, reaching out to grab the poison sword. You can't touch it, it's poisonous. Lu Xianming hurriedly used his divine sense to send a message. There was obviously no time to speak. Ling Han pretended not to hear. Pa, he grabbed the sword and said, I'm talking to you. Don't you know that it's very impolite to not reply to someone else's words? Especially when this person is your victim. Die. The third sneak attacker's eyes flashed with viciousness. You actually dared to grab the poison sword, then you're obviously dead. Who asked you to barge in and ruin their plans? Just as the target was about to be killed, you actually interfered. If I don't kill you, how can I vent my anger? Die. The other two sneak attackers also turned around to attack. They were all filled with fury towards Ling Han. Originally, this was a perfect and flawless assassination, but now, because of an outsider, all of their efforts had been ruined. If they had known this would happen, they really wouldn't have used him as bait. The 7 guards were stunned for a moment, and then immediately charged back. This time, they naturally weren't charging at Ling Han. Why are you completely fine? The third sneak attacker stared at Ling Han in a daze. Were you a monster? You had a poison sword in your hand, but you were completely fine. Ling Han had a strange expression and countered with a question, why would I be fine? Do you even know how to chat? The moment you open your mouth, you want people to die? You can't play around like this. The third sneak attacker was about to go crazy. How could there be such a person? Was he an idiot? He hurriedly pulled back his sword and retreated. There was no point in wasting time with this strange person. The main point was Lu Xianming. Lu Xianming. Ling Han's hand was burning with the 9 heavens flame. This was a celestial king tier flame. With the support of such a great Tao, how could the poison possibly enter his body? He gripped his sword, unmoving like a mountain. How could his opponent pull it back? Hey, don't be so agitated. Even I, the victim, am not agitated. I don't know what you're so anxious about. Ling Han was calm and unruffled. Come, give me an explanation. Why did you make me take the blame? Am I easy to bully? Easy to bully? Easy to bully? The third sneak attacker wanted to cry but had no tears. They really should not have provoked Ling Han. This was a complete lunatic, and an incomparably powerful lunatic at that. A chaotic battle ensued. The 2 sneak attackers faced off against the 7 guards. Putting aside their assassination techniques, the strength of these 2 sneak attackers was not much. Their strength lay in the fact that they would launch a fatal blow after they had stealthily moved to the side of their target. Once they clashed head-on, their strength would only be this much. Lu Xianming did not make a move. He only watched the almost farcical conversation between Ling Han and the third sneak attacker. I am a very easy person to talk to. As long as you compensate me with some godly metal or the like, of course. It has to be level 20. I will also accept pseudo-divine metal. Then I can write off the matter just now, Ling Han said seriously. Brother, if you help me take down these 3 people, I can give you a satisfactory reward. Lu Xianming suddenly spoke up. No, 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 we are also willing to pay, the third sneak attacker hurriedly called out. He already had a deep understanding of Ling Han's strength. Merely the magnificent feat of Ling Han being able to wield a poisonous blade was already enough to scare him out of his wits. Chapter 1854. Ling Han nodded. Then let the auction begin. Come, make your bid, don't hold back. There was such an auction? To say nothing of the 3 sneak attackers gritting their teeth, even Lu Xianming's expression was rather strange. He had indeed seen many strange people before, but it was really the first time he had seen someone like Ling Han. 1,000,000 star stones. However, Lu Xianming immediately spoke. 1 million star stones was a huge sum of money no matter where it was, but he casually said it as if it was not 1 million star stones, but a pile of useless rocks. The third sneak attacker instantly broke out in a cold sweat. In terms of wealth, how could he compare with the holy son of Alchemy City? 10 million. However, he shouted instead. Ling Han looked at him with a gaze full of suspicion and said, "Hey, do you know what the punishment is for bidding maliciously?" The third sneak attacker hurriedly explained, "You only have to kill him, and we can use his head to exchange for endless wealth. Not to mention 10 million, even 100 million, or 1 billion star stones would not be difficult." Hearing these words, Lu Xianming frowned slightly. It was indeed as the other had said, his life was very valuable, whether it was when he was alive or dead. Ling Han couldn't help but be amused. "I couldn't tell, but you are a smart person. However, since that guy's head is so valuable, why don't I take it to exchange for myself, and insist on having you do it?" "Because you have no idea who to look for," that person called out, actually feeling a little smug. "That does make some sense." Ling Han nodded. This caused the expressions of Lu Xianming and his 7 subordinates to change. They had really been afraid that Ling Han would agree. Though Ling Han had not truly acted yet, merely his current actions were frightening enough. No one wanted to push him to the other side and make him their enemy. "Sir, you still do not know who our young master is, right?" a guard asked, revealing Lu Xianming's identity. "Our young master Lu Xianming is one of the 11 holy sons of Alchemy City, and is also the one most likely to inherit the legacy. Alchemy City, a 4-star power. Moreover, we are not an ordinary 4-star power. Our Alchemy City has gathered more than 90% of the alchemists in the Eastern Celestial Realm. It can be said that in the entire Celestial Realm, at least 40% of the alchemical pills are produced by our Alchemy City." Oh, so it was an alchemist. Ling Han's mind spun and he understood. "The 3 of you were probably sent by Lu Xianming's competitors, right? When it came to the struggle for power, it had always been cruel. Families might even fight each other. Ling Han had a deep understanding of this when he was in the small world, and it was no different in the immortal realm. From a small world to the immortal domain, the only thing that changed was strength, but the people's hearts remained the same. The 3 of them did not reply, which was equivalent to tacit agreement. Ling Han did not take it to heart either, and said, "If your family fights to the death, it has nothing to do with me. However, I have never had the habit of using the lives of innocent people to make a fortune. It is better that you take out all the things in your pockets. We have only met by chance, and we will leave immediately. Forgive me for not taking credit." "Sir, could it be that you did not hear clearly? Our young master is the holy son of Alchemy City." A guard couldn't help but exclaim loudly, reminding Ling Han. "The holy son of Alchemy City? How many alchemists did he have under his command, and how many connections did each alchemist have?" This was incredibly frightening. It could be said that the chairperson of Alchemy City was definitely the #1 person below Celestial King tier, and no 4-star force dared to provoke him. And in terms of wealth, the only force that could compare with Alchemy City was the heavy military pavilion. Though you are very strong, you are only a 3rd severance. If it were not for the special circumstances this time, why would there be a need for everyone to curry favor with you? Ling Han walked over to that person, his expression filled with displeasure. "I am doing business, yet you are actually making a scene for me." He pressed a palm over, and that guard immediately fell on his bottom, cold sweat streaming down his forehead. This was too frightening. Though he was not injured, a domineering aura was enough to make him almost vomit in fright. Ling Han withdrew his gaze, cracked a smile, and said, "Come, let us continue." At this time, everyone was no longer fighting. Ling Han's strength was enough to crush everything. As long as he leaned towards a side, then that side would be able to obtain an absolute victory. Then what was there to fight for? Lu Xianming also frowned. He had not brought many star stones with him this time, so he might not be able to win against those 3 people. Both sides began to pool their money. Multiple star stones and godly metal were taken out from their spatial god tools and piled up on either side. However, Ling Han was still calculating the price for them in real time, so neither side dared to relax and desperately pulled out all their wealth. To be honest, those 7 guards really did not have much wealth. The majority of their wealth was completely supported by Lu Xianming, and the 3 sneak attackers were assassins, but had accumulated a considerable amount of wealth. Thus, both sides actually fought to a stalemate. As time went on, the speed at which they pulled out things became slower and slower, because they really could not find anything valuable after rummaging through the cabinets and cabinets. When both sides were completely unable to pull out anything, Ling Han smiled at those 3 assassins and said, "Congratulations, you have won the competition. And do you have any words that you want to say?" The 3 assassins all said in their minds. These were really words from the bottom of their hearts. Though they had won this competition, they had emptied out all their savings. This was an absolute loss. Fortunately, if they killed Lu Xianming, they would be able to earn some back no matter what. Lu Xianming's expression changed slightly, and his 7 subordinates were even more furious. They all grasped their weapons and stood guard around Lu Xianming. Ling Han nodded and said, "You can all scram now." The 3 assassins were startled. "Didn't we win? Why did he ask us to scram? This is your compensation for my losses. When did I agree to kill anyone?" Ling Han glared at them. "Hurry up and scram, or we'll have to start the bidding again." When those 3 assassins heard that, their faces immediately turned green, and they hurriedly broke into a run, secretly swearing in their hearts that they would never meet Ling Han again in this life. And this should not be a vow, but a prayer. After all, it was useless for them to swear. Lu Xianming and the others heaved a sigh of relief, but immediately their faces turned green again. Because not only did Ling Han take away the 3 assassins' belongings, he also didn't let them off. So, a guard couldn't help but call out, "What are you taking our things for?" Ling Han glared at him and said, "Do you know the rules? Could it be that I didn't save your young master's life, so shouldn't I take some compensation? Who do you think I am? A good Samaritan celestial king?" The 7 guards were instantly rendered speechless. Only now did they realize how unscrupulous Ling Han was. He was practically eating from both sides. Yet Lu Xianming clapped his hands and laughed loudly and said, "My friend is really an interesting person. May I ask how I should address you?" Ling Han said casually as he stored all his belongings into the Black Tower. "Brother Ling, are you willing to work for me? As for the compensation, you can name it as you wish," Lu Xianming said proudly. He indeed had this kind of confidence. Alchemy City was definitely the richest 4-star force in the world. Even the mass military pavilion could only keep up, and could barely compare. Chapter 1856. The ascending origin tier was only divided into 3 minor levels, and they were respectively small accomplishment, great accomplishment, and consummate. Old Demon Blood Shadow was in the minor accomplishment tier, but he had stayed in this tier for an unknown amount of time, and had endured the Immortal's tribulation countless times. However, his strength had not improved in the slightest, and the Immortal's tribulation had also become more and more difficult to pass. He had a feeling that if he did not break through to the Great Accomplishment realm, he would not be able to withstand the next Immortal's tribulation. Everyone else had the air of a transcendent being. Why did he have a head full of white hair? Furthermore, most of it had fallen off. That was because of Immortal's tribulation. It had caused him to look old and clumsy. Otherwise, he would have been a handsome man who could have charmed thousands of girls. Although he had hopes of breaking through to the Great Accomplishment realm, he did not have any confidence in passing the heavenly tribulation. Hence, he placed his hopes on the Natural Peach Talisman. However, 99% of the Natural Peach Talismans were in the hands of Celestial King tier forces, and there were even Celestial Kings in the 5th heaven and above. Putting aside stealing them, he didn't even dare to think about it. That would really be seeking death. Because his life was hanging by a thread, he made inquiries everywhere, and actually found out that there was a Natural Peach seal in Alchemy City. It was said that an Alchemy King had appeared in Alchemy City in the past, and he was able to refine Celestial King tier's supreme pills of the Tao. Thus, he was bestowed with 5 Natural Peach Talismans by a peerless Celestial King. Because this immortal king was too domineering, There wasn't a single power that dared to have any designs on these 5 natural peach talismans. Actually, he didn't want to move, but there was a sharp sword hanging over his head, so he had no choice but to take the risk. Besides, he didn't do it himself. Didn't he look for Ling Han? At that time, as long as he silenced Ling Han, it would naturally be impossible to pursue the matter. With the passage of time, Alchemy City had already used up 3 natural peach seals. At present, there were only 2 left. Then, one would be used when he achieved great mastery, and the other when he achieved consummate mastery. He was just right. By the way, the natural peach talisman was ineffective against celestial kings, because the natural peach talisman was only at the celestial king level, so how could it deceive such heavenly secrets? In any case, old demon Blood Shadow did not have the confidence to advance to the celestial king tier. The consummate level of the ascending origin tier was his final destination, and it was only a possible destination. However, as long as he reached the consummate level of the ascending origin tier, he would at least be able to live for a few more epochs. Perhaps another miracle would occur. The natural peach talisman can conceal the mysteries of the heavens and reduce the might of your heavenly tribulation by 1 level. The old bastard explained to Ling Han, "There are 2 natural peach seals in Alchemy City. I only need one and you can use the other. Your talent is extraordinary, and it is even possible that you can reach the 5th severance, but the heavenly tribulation of the 5th severance is completely impossible for you. You have to use the natural peach seal. How is it? Are you moved? Although I'm asking you to do something for me, it will also be of great benefit to you." He had bewitched Ling Han, but this was only to deceive Ling Han. He had to keep the 2 natural peach talismans for himself. Taking a step back, even if he did not use them, he could sell them. These things were not celestial medicines, but they were far more precious than most celestial medicines. Ling Han naturally wouldn't take it seriously. If he could believe this old man's words, he would be a pig flying into the sky. Of course, he wouldn't say it out loud. He only asked, "Then how can I steal the natural peach talisman? This is a treasure, how can it be stolen so easily?" Then that will have to depend on that brat just now," old demon Blood Shadow said smilingly. "That brat is the one most likely to inherit the orthodoxy of Alchemy City. I have been following him in secret all this while, giving him my protection." How clever was Ling Han? He immediately realized that the old bastard had long since had the idea to use Lu Xianming to enter into Alchemy City and steal the natural peach seal. True, the future heir would definitely have the chance to enter into the core treasury. He had really activated the halo of bad luck. He was really too unlucky. You go see that brat Lu Xianming, follow him, and help him ascend to the position of future chairperson. When you have the chance to enter into the treasury, take the opportunity to steal the natural peach seal. As for what to do, there is no need for me to teach you further, right? Old demon Blood Shadow continued. I will give you 10 million years. If you still have not taken back the natural peach seal by then, don't blame me for being merciless. When he said the last sentence, he revealed a sinister killing intent. He could not afford to delay. 10 million years was already his limit. He still had to leave enough time to break through to the great accomplishment tier. Ling Han sighed internally. After going 1 round, he actually still had to go to Alchemy City. However, he indeed needed the natural peach seal, and 1 was not enough. He needed 2. The Empress wanted them too. Then he would go steal it, and cause some trouble while he was at it. He could inform Commander Guan, for free. Ling Han had already made up his mind, so he nodded and said, I will do my best. Not your best, but you definitely have to succeed. Otherwise, your life will be gone. Old demon Blood Shadow clapped a hand on Ling Han's shoulder. With each pat, a burst of power would surge into Ling Han's body. Multiple black patterns immediately appeared on Ling Han's skin, exuding a smoke-like substance that exuded an incredibly evil aura. He couldn't help but grimace. This was too unbearable. I have already set the time for the curse to be released for you, and that is 10 million years later. However, to remind you that you have to make the best use of your time, this black murderous curse will activate once every year, and when the black murderous curse wants your life, the degree of pain will be 10,000 times more unbearable. You will only die after suffering 10,000 years of torture. Old Demon Blood Shadow withdrew his hand, and a strange expression flashed across his face. He kept having the feeling that there was something strange inside Ling Han's body, but when he thought of the imminent danger to his life, for him, 100 million years was really not a long time. He had already given Ling Han 10 million years to steal. Forget it, no matter what was strange, he would kill this brat after he obtained the natural peach seal, and slowly study it. This is a map, and I have already marked the place for you. Go. Old Demon Blood Shadow waved a hand at Ling Han. In his opinion, Ling Han was wasting his life now. Ling Han set out, and a sense of urgency suddenly rose up in his heart. No matter what, he had to first dispel the black murderous curse in his body. He didn't know if the Black Tower could do it or not. He did not immediately enter. Old Demon Blood Shadow was already suspicious of him, so it was better not to use the Black Tower for the time being. Even if an ascending origin tier elite followed Ling Han in secret, he would not be discovered by him. Just like when Old Demon Blood Shadow had first appeared, Ling Han had been completely caught off guard, and was directly captured. Alchemy City was very, very far away. Thankfully, Ling Han had the Dragon Hawk. He dragged this guy out of the Black Tower and knocked him awake. Ling Han then boarded it, and headed towards Alchemy City according to the map. He knew that Old Demon Blood Shadow was definitely following behind him, afraid that he would not give up and find someone to dispel the black murderous curse. Obediently, Ling Han hurried for a month, and a towering city appeared ahead. 4-star Great Force, Alchemy City. The whole city was built in the shape of an alchemy furnace, and there were innumerable formation patterns glowing on the exterior, protecting this ancient city. This should be the most heavily guarded place below Celestial King tier in the whole Eastern Celestial Realm. They were rich and overbearing, and would throw in the best materials, so they were naturally awesome. After entering into this city, Old Demon Blood Shadow should not dare to follow him anymore. That was because once such an elite entered into the city, he would definitely draw attention, and be watched by Alchemy City all day long. Furthermore, considering the old bastard's nickname, being called Old Demon by others, he would definitely be hated like a street rat. He might not dare to show himself easily, afraid that he would be beaten. Chapter 1857. Entering a 1-star city already had many rules, what more a 4-star city? Though Ling Han had entered the city, this city was divided into 5 zones. Aside from the first level, which could be entered as long as one paid money, the other 4 levels had to be applied for. For example, a Severing Mundane tier could apply to go to the 2nd level, a Dividing Soul tier could go to the 3rd level, the Immortal Palace tier could go to the 4th level, and an Ascending Origin tier could go to the 5th level. Additionally, alchemists could also go to different levels according to their skill level. Of course, applying was one thing, and whether it was approved or not was another. Ling Han first found an inn to stay in on the 5th level. Now, he had to deal with the problem of the black murderous curse in his body. He immediately entered the Black Tower. Small tower, Ling Han called softly. Black murderous curse, it's a little troublesome. If I use my power to erase it for you, it is very likely to alarm a few old monsters, so the best method is for you to be reborn in flames, and you will naturally be able to erase the black murderous curse, Small Tower quickly replied. Will it affect me normally? Ling Han asked. It won't, Small Tower said. It doesn't matter even if you don't understand. Even if the curse activates, and you die once, it will only be a rebirth in flames. Furthermore, you can also use the black murderous curse to train yourself, which is actually a good thing. Ling Han couldn't help but grimace. You haven't experienced the feeling of the black murderous curse activating, right? That's not pleasant. It has to happen once a year, and he really didn't want to try it again. If you want to become a supreme celestial king, you must endure the pain of suffering. If you don't even have this bit of willpower, then don't think about the 5th severance. Be an ordinary celestial king, and live an ordinary life, Small Tower said calmly. Fuck, though I know you are trying to provoke me, being looked down upon by a Tsundra Tower like you, I really can't accept it. Ling Han laughed loudly, showing heroism. All right, then I will have a fight. Ling Han exited the Black Tower. Since he temporarily couldn't find Commander Guan, then he would have the latter find him, and to make this a reality, he had to become famous. There were many ways to become famous, such as running naked or having sex in the wild. This was far too tasteless. He wasn't the large black dog, so how could he do such a thing? Either he slaughters a few hedonistic sons with deep backgrounds. This wouldn't do. This was a 4-star city. If he were to start a massacre, he would have to flee before Commander Guan arrived. This was clearly not a reliable plan. Then there was only one way left. Isn't this Alchemy City? Coincidentally, he was also the Alchemy Emperor. Let him conquer this city and make it a true Alchemy City. He already had a certain level of foundation in alchemy, and Xiang Yan had given him many pointers. It was just that he was temporarily unable to concoct pills. After all, the reincarnation tree could only increase his comprehension, but it could not increase his actual abilities. Alchemy still needed to rely on practice. The Empress was in seclusion, so Ling Han brought the heavenly phoenix divine maiden out for a breather. They began to stroll around the first level of the city. Of course, this was also ridiculously large. There were mountains and seas, comparable to a colossal planet. If they wanted to make a complete round, the amount of time needed would be astonishingly long. Thankfully, the majority of the resources were concentrated in the trade district. As long as they strolled around there, anything that could be found in the first level could be bought here. Ling Han mainly wanted to ask about alchemy. With his talent, he only needed to show his skills, and there would definitely be alchemists that would be overjoyed to recruit him. He definitely wouldn't do as the old demon Blood Shadow had said, and become Lu Xianming's assistant. Perhaps he would really develop here, and treat this place as his future base in the celestial realm. Because alchemy was a part of him that he could not part with, and this was at least the holy land of alchemy in the eastern celestial realm. If he inherited the teachings of Alchemy City, then wouldn't it be logical for him to take the natural peach seal? Did he need to steal it? Ling Han made this turn, and obtained a great surprise. There was a time cultivation chamber here. What was the use? The flow of time there would be much faster than in the outside world. In a day, no matter what he did, he would be able to save endless time. For example, alchemy would normally require 10 days, but inside, it would only require 5, 3, or even 1 day. Ling Han made a detailed inquiry. The time cultivation chamber here only had 4 kinds of acceleration effects: 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and 5 days. In other words, it could accelerate time by 2 to 5 times. It couldn't be helped. This was only the first level district. It was said that if one went further up, there would be time cultivation chambers of even higher quality, such as 10 times, 20 times, or 30 times. The most powerful could reach 100 times, and that was only available in the 5th level. Furthermore, it was definitely not something that could be obtained just by paying. The faster the flow of time was accelerated, the more resources needed to be expended. To say nothing of 10 times or 100 times, just 2 times of acceleration would cost 1 star stone a day. And 3 times of acceleration would be 2 star stones, 4 times of acceleration would be 5 star stones, and 5 times of acceleration would be 10 star stones. In terms of quality-price ratio, 2 times of acceleration was the most cost-effective, but one still had to consider the effect of acceleration. 3 or 4 times of acceleration was also very popular, and 5 times of acceleration was the privilege of the nouveau riche. If Ling Han wanted to comprehend Tao, then the reincarnation tree was still awesome. At the very beginning, he could already accelerate time by more than 300 times, and now it could accelerate time by more than 3 million times. But when it came to alchemy, the reincarnation tree was of no help at all. After knowing that there was something like the time cultivation chamber, he immediately became interested. Xiang Yan had once said that he could only refine his first cauldron of celestial pills after 10 years, but with the help of the time cultivation chamber, he could shorten this time to 2 years. If he went to the 2nd level, he could shorten it even further. He immediately made a decision. He would first apply to enter the 2nd level, and at the same time, he would concoct pills here. When his application was approved, he would go to the 2nd level. He could not waste time. Then, as long as he concocted a cauldron of pills and stunned the 4 levels, there would naturally be great alchemists who would come out to admire him as a genius, and it would be logical for him to enter the 3rd or 4th level. With the comprehension of the reincarnation tree, added with the overall acceleration of the time cultivation chamber, Ling Han did not believe that he could not become an outstanding alchemist in a short period of time. Go. He and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden headed towards the time cultivation chamber. There was only one place in the whole 1st level, and it was in this trade zone, not far. The 2 of them quickly arrived at the place. This was useless to the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. She wanted to severing mundane tier, and needed the accumulation of endless time. The reincarnation tree was the true path. Otherwise, even a time acceleration of 100 times would not be enough. She had come to accompany Ling Han, and would enter the Black Tower in a while. 8,000 years of eternity. Ling Han read the signboard outside this time cultivation chamber. This was a very large courtyard, and was divided into several hundred cultivation chambers. It can't be that some profligate young master has come out and has designs on me, right? The heavenly phoenix divine maiden said jokingly. She knew that Ling Han was easily tricked, and would always attract trouble. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "That's fine." The 2 of them entered the courtyard. This entrance was where tickets were sold, and each cultivation chamber could only be opened with a specialized message seal. Customers, what kind of cultivation chamber do you want that can accelerate your cultivation? I suggest that you choose one that has 3 times the speed. It has the best cost-performance ratio and practical effects, the ticketing clerk said. He was very attentive. Everyone who came was a customer. 5 times the speed, then for a month first. Ling Han drew out 300 star stones and handed them over. He was not short of money. No problem. The ticketing clerk received the star stones, and briefly inspected them. Then he handed Ling Han a message seal and said, "Customer, please keep this well. The cultivation chamber's number is 51. Come to think of it, this is the last cultivation chamber that has 5 times the speed of time. I have to remind you that only one person can enter a cultivation chamber. Once a second person appears, that cultivation chamber will automatically close, and the rest of the time will be regarded as you automatically giving up." Ling Han nodded. He had long since known this rule. This was to prevent someone from using a spatial god tool to bring a large group of people to freeload. He was just about to leave when he saw a young man rush over and say, "Give me a 5 times the speed of time cultivation chamber." It was more refreshing to read on mobile phones. Chapter 1858. 5 times cultivation room. The ticket seller shook his head. "No more, the last room has just been rented out." As he spoke, he even cast a glance at Ling Han. Ling Han's heart stirred slightly. Could it be that something melodramatic was about to happen again? That young man glanced at Ling Han, and then his face was all smiles, and he said, "Brother, can you sublet this cultivation room to me? I can give you 10% more star stones." Ling Han smiled. He had initially thought that this guy would be rich and overbearing, and use 10 times the star stones to crush him to death, but in the end, it was actually only 10% more. However, it was precisely because of this that it could be seen that this guy was not a profligate person. Otherwise, this guy would definitely be the most stingy profligate person in history. Ling Han shook his head and said, "I have no intention of subletting." That young man was frantic and continued to haggle unwillingly, hoping that Ling Han would sublet him, but was tactfully rejected. He did not threaten Ling Han, though, and said that he would do something if he did not sublet him. Ling Han was actually slightly smug. There was no conflict this time, and it seemed to be the first time in history, right? Not bad, it was worth a big compliment. Seeing him like this, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden couldn't help but cover her mouth and giggle. She naturally understood what Ling Han was thinking, but this husband of hers was actually feeling smug over such a matter, which was enough to show how astonishing his halo of hatred was. "Zhu Jin, have you settled it?" A very high-pitched voice rang out, and a young man walked over. He was clearly walking towards the first young man, but as he walked, his eyes fell on the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, and he couldn't take his eyes off her. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden showed an expression of displeasure and leaned her slender body slightly towards Ling Han, using Ling Han's body to block the other's gaze. The first young man was called Zhu Jin. He showed an awkward expression and said to the other young man, "Young Master Yu, I am really sorry, but the last 5 times cultivation room has just been rented out." The young man who was addressed as Young Master Yu used a gaze filled with suspicion to sweep over Zhu Jin and said, "Hey, you wouldn't be trying to save money and intentionally deceiving me, right?" "How would I dare?" Zhu Jin wiped his forehead, but there was no sweat. "If Young Master Yu does not believe me, you can ask the staff here." The ticket seller was quite cooperative. Although he didn't know who this Young Master Yu was, he still said, "That's right, Young Master Yu. The last 5x cultivation room is rented to this customer. Why don't you rent a 4x training room? The effects won't be that bad." "Bullshit." Young Master Yu immediately rebuked, the spittle in his mouth almost splashing onto Zhu Jin's face. Lu Yu either don't use it or if I do use it, I use the best. Otherwise, how do you expect me to face people when I return to Blue Eternity City?" After blabbering for a while, his gaze landed on Ling Han. "You, give the cultivation room to me. No matter how much money you want, go find that guy." He pointed at Zhu Jin, a hint of arrogance on his face. This was a show for the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. "How about it? I'm awesome, right? I have a lackey that I can order around at will, and if he wants money, I'll give him money." Ling Han sighed. He had thought that he could be normal for once and would not draw any hatred this time, but reality proved that it was easy to dodge a spear in the open, but hard to guard against a sneaky scum. He had encountered a scum again. Zhu Jin was given a fright. Though he had some money, he definitely couldn't resist demanding an exorbitant price. He hurriedly smiled and said, "Young Master Yu, don't joke around. This friend, how about helping me with a favor? I'll add 30% more star stones." "Zhu Jin, how can you be so petty? Don't let this beauty laugh at you, and don't make me lose face." Lu Yu humphed, appearing to be very displeased. Bargaining in front of a beauty? Couldn't he be a little more generous? Zhu Jin smiled bitterly. He was only the young master of a small clan. This time, he had specially accompanied Lu Yu to take a stroll around and flatter the Lu clan, because the Zhu clan wanted to obtain business from the Lu clan. But now, Lu Yu was putting on airs in front of a beauty. He was only flipping his lips, but he himself would have to pay with real money. With the small stature of the Lu clan, how could they withstand such extravagance? "Young Master Yu, actually, there is not much difference in the 4 times capacity cultivation chamber. I can rent it for a little more time," he said politely to Lu Yu. "Humph, then what about my face?" Lu Yu's expression was filled with arrogance. He was practically pointing his nostrils at Zhu Jin. "Don't forget, not only your Zhu clan, but also the Jin clan, the Ma clan, and the Cheng clan want to entertain me with great hospitality. You might not be willing to part with money, but there are others who are." Zhu Jin could only smile bitterly again and walk towards Ling Han. He said, "Friend, I am really sorry, but can we discuss this? I am willing to compensate you with double the amount." This time he had really bled a lot. He could only pray that Ling Han had not rented it for too long. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was not used to Lu Yu's arrogance, and also sympathized with Zhu Jin's subservience. She said to Ling Han, "Why don't we just let him have it?" In any case, Ling Han had already applied for the right to enter the 2nd level. He had only come here to experience it, so switching to the 4 times acceleration chamber would not have too great of an effect. At first, it was absolutely impossible for Ling Han to concede to a person like Lu Yu, but when his wife asked so softly, and Zhu Jin had been so polite all this while, his heart softened a little, and he said, "All right, I'll let you have him." Many thanks, many thanks." Zhu Jin hurriedly clasped his hands and bowed deeply in thanks. In Lu Yu's eyes, he sneered and said, "After all this time, he is only a greedy person. Pay, what is he, pretending to be reserved in front of this young master? Brat, hurry up and kneel to thank this young master for letting you earn a great deal." Ling Han had already stretched out the hand that was holding the communication talisman halfway, but when he heard this, he was angered and abruptly pulled it back. This time, it was definitely not that he had activated the halo of hatred, but this kind of trash was really asking for a beating. Don't you think you're despicable? I've already given the cultivation chamber to you, so just go ahead and gloat. You've already gained enough of an upper hand. But you insist on acting despicable. Ling Han stared at Lu Yu and said, swallow back all the words you just said. Yet Lu Yu had wanted to make trouble in the first place, not because Ling Han was displeased, but because of the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Though the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had not advanced into the severing mundane tier yet, which reduced her charm, she was still an exquisite beauty after all. In the whole of Alchemy City, there were at most 100 that could compare to her. This seemed like a lot, but how many people were there in a 4-star city, and how many elites were there? Lu Yu could only look up to any one of them. He swallowed, and then let his imagination run wild in his mind. But now, an exquisite beauty actually appeared in the 5th level area. What did this mean? He was completely qualified to pluck this flower. Who was Ling Han? A country bumpkin actually wanted to fight with him over a woman. Seeing that Ling Han had chosen to face him head-on, Lu Yu was not angered, but rather delighted. Only with this comparison could his superiority be clearly displayed. Oh, you want me to apologize? Lu Yu was very arrogant, and looked askance at Ling Han. Who do you think you are? Are you even worthy? Chapter 1860. Naturally, such a sudden incident would not affect Ling Han. As long as the rules of the game allowed it, he was not afraid of anyone. However, the premise was that he had to play within the rules and not go too far. If the divided soul did not make a move, who could do anything to him? Ling Han clapped his hands. He would just treat this saintly material as a gift. In any case, he definitely wouldn't want it anymore. Even if he pulled it out, his name would go down in history. He used the message talisman to open the cultivation room and entered. Then, he took out the pill furnace and prepared to concoct pills. Young Master Yu. Zhu Jin hurriedly went to support Lu Yu, first pulling his head out from the stone bricks. My buttocks, my buttocks. Lu Yu wanted to touch his buttocks, but just as he stretched his hand back, he was immediately attacked by a sharp pain. He couldn't help but bend his waist forward, but this movement caused the bamboo pole to move in and out, and his buttocks to feel another wave of pain. Coincidentally, another person came out of the cultivation room. When he saw the long bamboo pole sticking out of Lu Yu's buttocks, he was stunned for a moment before bursting into laughter. He wasn't the only one. The door to the stone room beside him also opened, and another person walked out. After a moment of shock, he laughed so hard that tears flowed from his eyes. Brother Ma, what is that person doing? A pervert who likes to stick his butt in. What a heavy taste. The two of them clearly knew each other. They must have come here to cultivate together, which was why they came out at the same time. They chatted as they looked at Lu Yu, and then walked outside. When Lu Yu heard this, his face naturally turned the color of a pig's liver. He felt that his entire life was gray, without a trace of color. He gritted his teeth and said to Zhu Jin, Bastard, why haven't you pulled it out yet? Zhu Jin nodded, placing his hand on the bamboo pole. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Lu Yu hurriedly cried out. As long as his hand trembled, his chrysanthemum would be ravaged. Zhu Jin fiercely pulled, and the bamboo pole was finally pulled out. Then, with a pu sound, an arrow of blood spurted out from Lu Yu's buttocks. Lu Yu screamed again. However, it was better to get the pain over with than to prolong it. After the bamboo pole was pulled out, although the pain was excruciating and he suddenly felt empty, at least he did not need to be tortured anymore. He covered his buttocks with one hand. Of course, his pants were completely dyed red with blood, and his eyes were spitting fire. Bastard, I swear I won't coexist with you. Young Master Yu, forget it. He was a native of Alchemy City, so he was naturally very clear about the rules of the city. Normally speaking, if Lu Yu wanted to get back at him, he could only seek out a severing mundane tier for revenge. Otherwise, he would have to wait for Ling Han to enter some desolate mountain or wilderness, and only then would he have a dividing soul tier make a move. But judging from the strength that Ling Han had just displayed, how many severing mundane tiers could suppress him? He must be at the king level, right? Zhu Jin was only an ordinary severing mundane tier. In his eyes, Ling Han definitely could not be a king tier. Otherwise, what was the point of him coming to the 5th level? And because Lu Yu was an outsider, his application to enter the 2nd level had not been approved yet, so he could only wander around the 1st level. Otherwise, he would not have encountered Ling Han. Thus, even though Ling Han's earlier performance had been very astonishing, Zhu Jin still felt that a king tier would definitely be able to suppress him. The problem was, how were they going to get a king to help? Putting aside the fact that he, Zhu Jin, did not have that kind of face, Lu Yu similarly could not. Get lost. Lu Yu pushed Zhu Jin aside, his expression filled with disgust. In his eyes, Zhu Jin was simply trying to make a fool of himself. Otherwise, why would he not have made a move to help previously? Who didn't know how to fake a few words of persuasion? Bitch. Young Master Yu. Zhu Jin still wanted to try harder. After all, the Zhu clan was a businessman. Fuck, are you going to get lost or not? Lu Yu glared, feeling that Zhu Jin's expression was repulsive, almost no better than Ling Han's. He had suffered such a great injustice, and you actually advised me to let it go, you motherfuck you asterisk. Did you think that you had to rely on your Zhu clan? Humph, there were quite a few clans fighting to express goodwill to me, but I was blind, actually choosing such a cowardly and unloyal guy. Humph. With a flick of his sleeves, he dashed out the door. However, as he left like this, his bottom naturally hurt shockingly, and he involuntarily reached out to support himself again. Then he clamped his legs tightly together and advanced in an incredibly awkward manner. However, a severing mundane tier was a severing mundane tier, after all. Even so, his speed was still astonishingly fast, and he had disappeared in an instant. Zhu Jin couldn't help but sigh, not knowing how to react. However, he did not chase after him in the end. He was also a person who wanted face. He had repeatedly lowered his voice and used his warm face to stick to someone's cold bottom. He had had enough of it. Lu Yu walked for a while and involuntarily stopped, beginning to think. Who should he look for? Actually, he also knew the rules of Alchemy City, so if the helper he found was not good enough, that would actually be seeking his own humiliation. Got it, go look for Sun Dong. His eyes lit up and he clapped his hands, but because of this action, his bottom was affected, causing him to howl again, causing the pedestrians on the street to all move towards him. Lu Yu hurriedly entered into his spatial god tool. No matter what, he had to change his clothes first. The Sun clan is very strong in the first place, and Sun Dong has the title of a small king tier. His cultivation level is at the peak stage of the 4th severance, but he is more arrogant and not as obedient as others, so I did not go look for him. Hehe, the Sun clan is also a supporter of the Holy Sun, Lu Xianming. If Sun Dong still has no way to deal with that brat, he definitely can only seek help from Lu Xianming. If Lu Xianming still has no way to deal with that guy, then I'll admit defeat. I'll go look for Sun Dong right now. Lu Yu exited his spatial god tool and arrived at a brothel in an incredibly awkward position. The Sun clan was a 3-star force, and their main branch was on the 4th level. If Lu Yu wanted to go to the Sun clan, he would have to first contact a member of the Sun clan, and only with the Sun clan stepping out could he be brought up. But where would Lu Yu find so much time? Thankfully, Sun Dong was a person who liked to indulge in love with women the most, and the brothel industry on the 5th level was the most developed. He would spend at least 8 months of the year here. Thus, Lu Yu easily found his way over. After all, he had also fooled around here for a period of time, and was very familiar with it. The people in the brothel all recognized him as a major client, and when they saw him enter, they all began to greet him. Yo, young Master Yu, why are you clamping your buttocks so tightly? It can't be that you played too much last night and got your buttocks busted by someone, right? A girl came up to greet him, and even used the silk handkerchief in her hand to sweep across Lu Yu's chest. If it was any other time, Lu Yu would definitely laugh loudly and seize the opportunity to pinch the other party's chest to take advantage of him. But right now, he was unable to restrain his anger. Pa, he gave that girl a slap on the face. Who got their buttocks busted? He said darkly, and had the urge to kill. Instantly, Everyone was as silent as cicadas in winter and did not dare to make a sound. Ha, Lu Yu, why are you so hot-tempered? Someone really did it. Amidst the loud laughter, a young man walked out, and each of his hands was placed on the shoulders of a girl who was scantily clad. It was Sun Dong. Young Master Dong. Lu Yu hurriedly went up to greet him. In front of the other party, he did not dare to put on any airs. This was also the reason why he did not look for Sun Dong. He did not have any sense of superiority. Chapter 1861. Lu Yu, you didn't really get your ass asteriskus penetrated, did you? Sun Dong was startled. The other's awkward posture was really similar. After all, though he hadn't penetrated a man's asteriskus, he had played with quite a few women's butts. Lu Yu's face instantly flushed, and an expression of extreme fury flashed across his face. Haha. Sun Dong instantly laughed loudly, not caring about Lu Yu's feelings at all. In the brothel, the others didn't dare to laugh out loud. They all covered their mouths, holding it in with great difficulty. Lu Yu, I really didn't see it. Your taste is quite heavy. Sun Dong said, clicking his tongue. He was obviously not praising the other. Lu Yu hurriedly said, Young Master Dong, you've misunderstood. I was bullied. What, and by force? Sun Dong glanced at Lu Yu, and then let go of the two women's hands. He walked to the other's side, and pulled off Lu Yu's pants. Then he sucked in a breath of cold air. Not only him, but the other people in the brothel were also shocked. Good heavens, this was too fierce, to actually penetrate his asterisk's so badly. How thick was this guy? Fuck, I think my asterisk's are big enough, but compared to this, it's not enough. Sun Dong felt as if he had suffered 10,000 points of damage. Men were always very mindful in this aspect. Though there was almost no chance for them to compare sizes, when there was a chance to do so, they still couldn't help but compare. Those brothel girls were also shocked. So thick, none of them could stand it, and would definitely be played with until they broke. No. Lu Yu wanted to die. So many people were staring at him strangely. It's not a human. No. I wasn't stabbed in the butt. I was stabbed by a bamboo pole. Sun Dong was startled at first, then laughed loudly. He clapped Lu Yu's shoulder and said, I underestimated you before. Since you're so good at playing, follow me in the future, and I'll take you as my underling. Young Master Dong, you have to help me vent my anger. Lu Yu was also shameless, and recounted what had happened previously. But when it came from his mouth, he naturally would not say that he had been aggressive in the first place. Instead, he glossed over the matter, and focused on the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's beauty and Ling Han's domineering nature. Sun Dong's interest was piqued. In this alchemy city, there is actually such an arrogant fellow? Also, are you sure that woman is as beautiful as you say she is? I'll definitely surpass them, Lu Yu promised. Sun Dong snapped his fingers and said, Go, bring this young master over. Lu Yu was overjoyed and hurriedly led Sun Dong out. However, when they arrived at the place, Ling Han had long since entered the cultivation room. It must be known that this place was opened by the big shots of the 4th or even 5th floor. Even if Sun Dong was given 10,000 guts, he still wouldn't dare to smash open the door to look for Ling Han. Therefore, after asking Ling Han for a month's worth of cultivation time, he returned to the brothel to have fun and would come back in a month's time. Inside the time cultivation room, Ling Han took out the pill furnace and began refining pills. Although the lowest grade of immortal pills required immortal medicines, the amount was not much. As long as a small amount of immortal medicine was used as the main ingredient, the rest could be supplemented by sacred medicines. Of course, the more immortal medicines were used, the higher the grade of the finished pill would be. This was definite. Ling Han had only just started, so he naturally wouldn't put in too many immortal medicines at once. He was destined to fail, but he would summarize his experience from his failures and increase the success rate of his next attempt. After plundering the possessions of so many holy sons and holy daughters in the Hidden Dragon Mystery Realm, he was really quite rich now. There were as many as 4 celestial medicines, and 3 of them had come from Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng. The heirs of celestial king-tier forces were indeed astonishingly wealthy, but there were also grades of celestial medicines which were determined by their age and also by their elemental attributes. Space and time elements were definitely much more valuable. It didn't matter if they were of a higher grade or a lower grade. The most important thing was that he could refine alchemical pills. Ling Han drew out a stalk of celestial medicine, carefully sliced off a piece, and tossed it into the pill furnace. Then, using the 9 heavens flame as the cauldron fire, he immediately began to refine alchemical pills. In terms of alchemical pill refinement, Ling Han was better than 99% of alchemists because he had the 9 heavens flame. The most important aspect of alchemical pill refinement was controlling fire, and the 9 heavens flame was one of the 9 great ancestral flames, so no alchemist could possibly have better conditions than Ling Han. They could only be on par with him, and there would only be 8 alchemists at most. How many of them would be alchemists? Perhaps there wouldn't even be one. Boom, the 9 heavens flame blazed, and Ling Han endlessly tossed supplementary ingredients into the pill furnace. There was no need for him to be stingy with this. Saintly medicines were too worthless in the celestial realm and could be found everywhere. After a month, the pill furnace exploded. Failure. Ling Han stopped and entered into the Black Tower, reflecting under the reincarnation tree. The acceleration of the flow of time couldn't overlap with the reincarnation tree, but since this was a problem of reflection, then the reincarnation tree was definitely better. There's no problem with my technique. At most, I'm a little rusty. The problem now is the pill furnace. The 9 heavens flame is too powerful, and the pill furnace can't handle it first. And if I have to take care of the pill furnace as well, that will definitely increase the difficulty, and I have to divert a part of my attention. I have to get a better pill furnace. If a worker wants to do a good job, he must first sharpen his tools. The ancients were right. However, there was no good pill furnace for him now, so Ling Han could only draw out another pill furnace and continue his journey of alchemical pill refinement. 2 months later, the pill furnace exploded again. Ling Han reflected for a while and then continued. This time, he failed in half a month. Even if he was the alchemy emperor, if he wanted to advance to the level of celestial alchemy, the path was still full of thorns. However, this didn't discourage Ling Han. Instead, a powerful fighting spirit rose in him. Only a challenge was interesting enough. He diligently concocted alchemical pills. However, 5 months passed very quickly, and the doors of the cultivation chamber opened automatically. A month has passed in the outside world, and my application to enter the 2nd level should have been approved as well. I can just go to the 2nd level to exchange for a cultivation chamber that has a better effect of speeding up. In that case, I'm confident that I can become a celestial level alchemist in a year, or even less. Ling Han was still quite satisfied. After all, no matter which 1-star alchemist it was, they would at least be troubled by this step for tens of millions of years. His speed was really astonishing. Who asked him to have the reincarnation tree? He stood up and left. However, he had just stepped out of the door when he saw 2 people standing guard outside the door. That one was there to stop him. As for the other one, Ling Han didn't recognize him and had no interest in knowing. Brat. The moment Lu Yu saw Ling Han, he immediately gritted his teeth. Even now, his buttocks still hadn't completely recovered. Who asked Ling Han to use a sliver of the power of regulation when he stabbed? At least for a few months, he would have to grit his teeth even if he squatted. Ling Han took a look at him and couldn't help but smile. Is Lord Chrysanthemum well? Well, your sister. You still have the nerve to ask. Lu Yu was so angry that he wanted to kill someone, but he knew that he was no match for Ling Han. He hurriedly said to Sun Dong, Young Master Dong, is this brat so arrogant that he considers everyone beneath him? Even if you are here, he is still so arrogant. He doesn't take you seriously at all. Sun Dong was unrestrained and unrestrained. Though he was wearing a long robe, his chest was open, revealing his thick chest hair. He cast a cold glance at Ling Han. Brat, are you looking down on me? Chapter 1862. Ling Han knew that Lu Yu was deliberately provoking him, But the problem was that he really did not have the habit of lowering his voice to others. If I offended you, then why should I lower my voice to others? There was no helping it. Ling Han's temper was just like that. He also glanced at Sun Dong and said, "Do I need you or do I not?" To be honest, he really did not take Sun Dong to heart. Now, those that could be regarded as opponents by him would at least be holy sons and holy daughters that had walked out from great sects that were fifth heaven celestial king tier and above. Like Sun Dong, who was only worthy of being killed by him in an instant, even not being able to afford it was a very great ability. Sun Dong was stunned, and then laughed loudly, clapping his hands, and said, "Arrogant, indeed arrogant. I heard that you have a wife, and she is quite pretty. Let her come out and give her to me." This was a complete provocation. So what? I'll treat your wife as a prostitute. Ling Han raised his eyebrows, and his expression became sinister. Did you not notice this good example? He pointed at Lu Yu. It's precisely because his mouth is too dirty that he was beaten like a dog by me. If you don't immediately swallow back the thing that you just pooped out, then wait to be like him. Sun Dong laughed loudly and said, "Brat, you also want to explode my ass? Just because of this sentence, I'll also find 100 strong men to fuck you until you scream. Young Master Dong, why don't we find some wild boars or wild bears and the like?" Lu Yu suggested from the side. His ass was still broken, and his heart was filled with hatred. This idea is not bad. Sun Dong clapped, expressing that he would readily accept the suggestion. Lie down obediently. He reached out, grabbing towards Ling Han. Ling Han did not retaliate. When Sun Dong's attack was about to reach him, he glared at him, and a terrifying murderous aura surged over. Instantly, Sun Dong's entire body froze, and his movements became sluggish. One had to know that Ling Han had originally cultivated the might of heavenly punishment from lightning, and only kings could resist it. Now, he had also cultivated the regulations of slaughter. How terrifying was this? Sun Dong only felt his heart contracting as a chill spread through his entire body. Let alone continuing to attack, just being able to stand had already exhausted all of his strength and willpower. Otherwise, he would definitely have knelt down by now. How could there be such a powerful person? Although he wasn't a king tier, he was only a hair's breadth away from it. However, he couldn't even make a move in front of Ling Han. What kind of gap was this? Explode, explode, explode your ass. Ling Han was infuriated, and he kicked Sun Dong to the ground. I'm cultivating my character, and I'm planning to keep a low profile for a while, but all of you are stepping on my head. Do you think I'm easy to bully? This was the truth. This time, he didn't want to trample on any silk pants. He just wanted to refine pills in peace and rely on this to make a name for himself. From there, he could attract Commander Guan and continue his journey to the Rock Palace. This time, he was really modest enough, even giving up the cultivation room, but in the end, stepping on one didn't count, and now another one popped up for him to step on. Fuck, did you think he wouldn't step on it? Shwa, a bamboo pole appeared again, and with a pu, it stabbed into Sun Dong's buttocks. Sun Dong instantly released an extremely tragic cry. He had exploded many people's buttocks, but this was the first time he had been exploded by someone, and it was something as thick as a bamboo pole. At the side, Lu Yu was so angry that his face had turned green. At that time, he had only felt pain, but when he saw with his own eyes that such a thick thing had not entered Sun Dong's buttocks, he couldn't help but feel his buttocks tighten. Even now, this injury had not healed. And you? Ling Han grabbed Lu Yu over. I spared you once, but you didn't want to, and insisted on being beaten. After being beaten once, you still haven't learned your lesson. Have you become addicted to being stabbed? Fine, I'll fulfill your wish. Pooh, another bamboo pole was stabbed into Lu Yu's buttocks. Ling Han clapped his hands, and saw that these two people were kneeling on the ground, their buttocks raised high up in the air. The two bamboo poles were trembling, and it was very rhythmic, causing him to feel as if he had created an artistic creation. Sigh, he had spent too much time with the large black dog, so it was inevitable that he would be influenced. Ling Han left the cultivation chamber, and hurried to the management manor of the first level. He had submitted his application here, and he would also have to obtain an official reply here. There would be an entry plaque, and with this, he could enter the second level. What? It didn't pass? He looked at the examiner, appearing to be very surprised. That was because he was in the severing mundane tier, and this application should only be going through a process, so how could it possibly be rejected? You have come at a rather opportune time. Grandmaster Ziqing has just concocted a Tao regulating pill. His style is unique, and he never sells alchemical pills. Thus, this Tao regulating pill will also be taken out as a reward, and all the severing mundane tier cultivators in the city will compete to obtain it, the examiner said. Now, every level is undergoing a screening process. In order to prevent people from failing in this level and entering the second level to register again, the applications of severing mundane tier cultivators to enter the second level are temporarily suspended. What a coincidence! Ling Han asked. May I ask, what effect does this Tao regulating pill have? It is useless to tell you. There are many people who covet this precious pill, and it is not something that you can obtain at all. Hehe, do you know the eternal prosperity celestial king? This examiner was definitely a chatterbox. It was useless to tell you, but he was extremely talkative. Ling Han patiently smiled and answered, I don't know. It's good that you don't know. That examiner had even more room to show off and said, speaking of the eternal prosperity celestial king, that is a true overlord of a generation. Do you know that there are 9 levels of celestial king tier, and each step is like ascending to the heavens? Ling Han broke out in a sweat and said, I do know that. Hehe, that eternal prosperity celestial king is an 8th heaven celestial king, and the eternal prosperity sect will last for 10,000 years and prosper forever, the examiner said. Ling Han was a little driven mad. I'm asking you what effect does the Tao regulating pill have, yet you're talking about the eternal prosperity celestial king? What's with your brain? This time, even the eternal prosperity palace has sent a lord over, and it is Zhao Qingfeng, one of the 4 heavenly kings under Holy Sun Yen Xianlu. He has come to seize the Tao regulating pill on the orders of Holy Sun Yen Xianlu. Say, even Lord Zhao Qingfeng is going to make a move, so how could you possibly obtain the Tao regulating pill? The examiner said. After going around in such a big circle, Ling Han finally understood the other's meaning. Firstly, there was no hope for him, and secondly, it meant that the Tao regulating pill was so popular that even the holy son of an 8th heaven celestial king tier clan had sent someone over. 8th heaven celestial king tier, a fighting spirit rose up in Ling Han. The holy son of an 8th heaven celestial king tier clan should be able to be ranked among the strongest in the world, and was the true supreme prodigy that the large black dog had spoken of. However, a prodigy nurtured by an 8th heaven celestial king tier clan might not be able to rank in the upper echelons, but there should be no problem for him to rank in the middle. Too bad, the one who had come was only a subordinate of Yen Xianlu. Ling Han asked again and again, and that examiner finally revealed the effect of the Tao regulating pill. As it turned out, this celestial aid could strengthen one's Tao foundation. For ordinary severing mundane tiers, it was practically useless, but for prodigies, this was a precious treasure. To put it in perspective, cultivation was like piling up rocks. The prodigy could use the same number of rocks to stack them higher, but it was also because of this that if the foundation was not strong enough, it was possible that it would be on the verge of collapse. If one continued to climb, there would be the danger of collapse. The Tao of reinforcing pill could strengthen one's foundation, and from there, one could continue to climb upwards. It was precisely because of this effect that even Yen Xianlu was tempted. However, it was unknown whether it was because he valued his status and disdained to come personally, or because he had other important matters to attend to, so he had only sent a subordinate over. However, since Ling Han now knew, he would accept this Tao regulating pill. Chapter 1864. Invincible isn't just for show. Bao Qing said slowly. If it was Yen Xianlu here, he would definitely have no choice but to submit, but Zhao Qingfeng was only Yen Xianlu's lackey, so what right did he have to say that he was invincible in the severing mundane tier? What a joke! What kind of trash were they, the holy sons and holy virgins? Zhao Qing glanced at Bao Cheng and revealed a mocking smile. You're not convinced? Nonsense, of course not. To say nothing of Bao Cheng, even the expressions of the other two holy sons and holy daughter were filled with displeasure. You are merely a lackey, and you actually dare raise your head in front of them? Do you think that you have become a monarch tier just because you have followed Yan Xianlu? Of course not. Bao Cheng snorted. You guys aren't convinced either, Zhao Qingfeng said to the other two. The two holy sons and holy daughters appeared very arrogant. It was not worthwhile for them to lower themselves to the same level as a servant. If you don't accept it, then come and fight. I've come this time to beat you trash, said Zhao Qingfeng without the slightest bit of politeness. He didn't give the three holy sons and holy daughters any face at all. Bao Cheng and the other two were naturally enraged. A mere follower like you actually dared to speak to us like this? Are you even worthy? Zhao Qingfeng smiled slightly, a smile full of ridicule. Do you think that just anyone can be a subordinate of the Lord Holy Son? Just the likes of you aren't even fit to carry his shoes. Shua, Bao Cheng and the other two stood up at the same time, their faces filled with fury. Fuck, we admit that we are inferior to Yan Xianlu, but you actually say that we are not even worthy of being Yan Xianlu's assistant or carrying his shoes. Aren't you thinking too lowly of us? Hee, some people really need to be taught a lesson. Bao Cheng walked towards Zhao Qingfeng and hooked his finger. Come, how do I beat you into submission? Zhao Qingfeng snorted. So much nonsense. Bao Cheng was infuriated, and the other two holy sons and holy daughters also revealed angry expressions because they were also the targets of disdain. Lu Xianming, on the other hand, had no intention of standing up to stop the fight. He just smiled and drank his tea. Sun Dong was very excited. He didn't expect Zhao Qingfeng to be so awesome. He dared to challenge the three great saints by himself. More importantly, Zhao Qingfeng had said that he wanted to deal with Ling Han. He naturally hoped that Zhao Qingfeng would be as strong as possible, so that he could crush Ling Han in minutes. Zhao Qingfeng and Bao Cheng walked out of the main hall, and then soared into midair. This fourth level naturally had formations protecting it, and with their severing mundane tier abilities, it was definitely impossible for them to break through. They were fighting in the air because they didn't want the aftermath to flatten the buildings here. Make your move. Bao Cheng was conscious of his own status. He was a holy son, and the other was only Yan Xianlu's subordinate. He did not want to tarnish his own reputation. Zhao Qingfeng grinned, and suddenly attacked. Xiao, his figure suddenly disappeared from the spot, and then appeared in front of Bao Cheng, a fist smashing over. Law of space. Bao Cheng grunted as his expression changed slightly. He had not expected Zhao Qingfeng to have grasped the relatively rare law of space. This was a little unexpected. However, he was a holy son after all, an emperor of this generation. Although he was shocked, he didn't panic in the slightest. He used his finger as a sword and slashed at Zhao Qingfeng. There was flowing light flashing at the tip of his finger, and it emitted a baleful aura. He was a sharp metal immortal fetus, and once he activated the power of his bloodline, every part of his body could become an invincible weapon. With a strike of his sword, he could split open the heavens and cleave the earth. Yet Zhao Qingfeng was unafraid. His fist still landed, clashing head-on with Bao Cheng. Boom! Their powers collided, and regulations were thrown into chaos. This was the clash of Dao techniques between two elites. Xiao, Bao Cheng was immediately sent flying, spitting out a mouthful of blood. His whole body was enveloped by a light shield that was on the verge of collapse. In contrast, Zhao Qingfeng was calm and composed, and had not even taken half a step back. This scene caused the expressions of the other two holy sons and holy daughter to change drastically. Too strong, too strong. Even Bao Cheng had been defeated with a single strike. Admittedly, this was because Bao Cheng had somewhat underestimated his opponent. He had not expected that the other was actually skilled in the law of space, and had been forced into a head-on clash, but it should be known that as a holy son, he should be invincible among those of the same cultivation level. Only they would be able to crush others. But now, he had actually been defeated in a head-on clash. Was this really some follower? He was even stronger than a holy sun. The moment Zhao Qingfeng moved, his whole aura immediately changed drastically. Previously, he had been careless, and though he had also been very arrogant, it was more of indifference. But after he made his move, he became incredibly cold and exuded a chilling, killing intent. Xiao, his figure flashed again, and he swiftly chased after Bao Cheng. Then he attacked again. His fist shot out and turned into a boundless mountain that came crashing down. Bao Cheng could only take it head-on, but the consequence of taking it head-on was that he spat out another mouthful of blood, and the light shield on his body completely dissipated. In a mere 10-odd moves, Bao Cheng was blasted down from the sky. He coughed up blood repeatedly, and his essence, spirit, and spirit fell to rock bottom. Zhao Qingfeng did not kill them all. He clasped his hands behind his back and walked toward the other two holy sons and holy daughters, saying, "Are you dregs still not convinced?" The two of them had bitter expressions and swallowed with incredible difficulty. However, they were completely powerless to refute him. If one wanted to become a holy son or holy daughter, it was basically a must to have a divine fetus. Of course, there were also an extremely small number of supremely talented people who were clearly not divine fetus, but the potential that erupted from them surpassed that of a divine fetus. These two were naturally divine fetus as well, but only in front of Zhao Qingfeng did they realize that their divine fetus was completely worthless. Just like how celestial kings were divided into 9 levels, there was also a difference in strength between divine fetus. Zhao Qingfeng was a space element divine fetus. Before he became a celestial king, the power of regulation that he grasped was a notch stronger than that of the 5 elements. The two of them were clearly at the same cultivation level, and their natural talent was about the same, but with the help of a space element divine fetus, he was actually a notch stronger. In truth, Bao Cheng was not as weak as he had appeared, but they had not thought that he would actually encounter a space element divine fetus, and it seemed to be a great accomplishment at that. The moment he lost the initiative, he was directly smashed into pieces. However, these two people thought to themselves that even if they were already prepared now, they would only be able to withstand a few more moves. They definitely could not defeat Zhao Qingfeng. Zhao Qingfeng's strength was inconceivable. Both of them found it hard to accept. If it was said that Yan Xianlu could be so strong, they would accept it, but a subordinate of his could also easily defeat them. This was something that they could not accept. Then how great was the gap between them and Yan Xianlu? Brother Lu, farewell. These two holy sons and holy daughter were dejected. They had come to fight over the Tao-regulating pill, but with Zhao Qingfeng stepping forward, what need was there for them to seek their own humiliation? Lu Xianming only clasped his hands in greeting and did not urge them to stay. In the first place, there was no friendship between them. If it was not for the Tao-regulating pill, perhaps they would not have met in this lifetime. After Bao Cheng woke up, he too slipped away dejectedly. Meanwhile, Zhao Qingfeng turned to Sun Dong and asked, "Where is that person? Let me over." "Yes, milord." Sun Dong hurriedly nodded in pleasant surprise. This young man was really freakish, being able to easily defeat even a holy son, so what was Ling Han worth? At most, he was only the heir of a 3-star force, so could he compare with the holy son of a celestial king tier force? That was definitely the only fate that would be smashed into pieces. Lu Xianming chuckled and said, "Then I will go with you. If it was anyone else, so be it, but Yan Xianlu was too strong and would definitely become a celestial king in future." He had to make use of this connection. Chapter 1865. However, when Sun Dong led Zhao Qingfeng and Lu Xianming to the first floor, he discovered that Ling Han had entered into the time cultivation chamber again. "No matter, this person has definitely come to participate in the tournament," Zhao Qingfeng said with a smile. "With his strength, he will definitely be able to stand out from the first floor. Then I will wait for him in the finals." He bared his teeth, revealing 2 rows of snow-white teeth, yet he was as bloodthirsty as a wild beast. Those who were not familiar with him would only think that he was cold and proud, but those who truly understood him would tremble in fear. That was because what he loved the most was killing. Among the 4 heavenly kings under Yan Xianlu, he was the most bloodthirsty. In fact, when fighting for treasures in ancient sites, he had even killed a few holy sons and holy daughters. If it were not for the fact that the Eternal Prosperity Palace was an 8th heaven celestial king tier force, he would probably have been captured long ago to pay with his life. Torturing and killing prodigies was his greatest hobby. Why didn't he kill Bao Cheng? It was not because he was afraid of the rules of Alchemy City. Of course, this was also part of the reason. After all, he had come for the Tao regulating pill this time. If he was chased out, how would he explain it to Yan Xianlu? In this vast world, he only feared Yan Xianlu. Otherwise, with his talent, he could become a holy son in any great sect, so why would he need to be a subordinate? More importantly, Bao Cheng and the others could no longer be considered prodigies in his eyes, so there was no meaning in killing them. A single look from Ling Han scared Sun Dong to the ground, and this aroused his interest. If they met in the tournament, then it would be fine even if he killed him, right? He showed a cruel smile. Torturing and killing a prodigy would endlessly stimulate his martial art heart. If Ling Han was strong enough, then he could use this to open the door to the 5th severance. He hoped that Ling Han would not disappoint him. Because he could not go to the 2nd floor for the time being, Ling Han first went to understand the matter of the Tao regulating pill. It was very simple. First sign up, then fight, 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 fight. Each floor would have 4 people, and then the winners of the 4th floor would fight again. The final champion would obtain this Tao regulating pill. No one would participate in the 5th floor's battles. Those who lived there were all supreme elites of Alchemy City, or great alchemists. Every time alchemist Zicheng refined a precious alchemical pill, he would battle it out like this to determine who it would belong to, regardless of how many stars it was. Several million years ago, there were still a great many ascending origin elites competing, and not just in Alchemy City. As long as one came to register, he could participate in the competition. This alchemist liked this kind of thing. He liked it when martial artists fought over pills until their heads bled. However, because Alchemy City had the custom of locking the levels once the competition began, the competition in the 1st level was the greatest. People from all over the world could only register here, and then fight their way out. There were only 4 spots, so it would definitely be a fierce battle. Ling Han went to register first. It was done very quickly because the registration had been open for more than 10 days. Although there were still people coming to register, it was not as crowded as before. The competition would begin 11 days later. Taking advantage of the time he still had, Ling Han went to the time cultivation chamber again. This time, he naturally only needed 10 days, and after acceleration, it would be 50 days. It was not a short time, and definitely could not be wasted. Without any suspense, these 50 days of attempts still ended in failure, but Ling Han's confidence grew. In another 5 years' time, he would definitely be able to concoct his first cauldron of celestial pills. Then, if it was accelerated by 5 times, he could shorten it to 1 year, and if it was accelerated by 10 times, he would only need half a year. If the acceleration effect was even higher, then this realistic time could be further shortened. When Ling Han came out of the cultivation chamber, there was only 1 day left before the tournament would begin. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden came out of the Black Tower. She wanted to cheer for Ling Han and watch her beloved man sweep through all obstacles, defeating all prodigies. Meanwhile, the Empress was still in seclusion because she was at the crucial moment of breaking through to the 4th severance. The 2 of them went to the arena on the 1st level. This was used for battle. It could be used for people to spar, and it could also be used for humans to battle demonic beasts, divine beasts, and immortal beasts. Of course, there were also battles between beasts as well as group battles. Not only was the battle area of the arena very large, the spectator stands were also ridiculously large, enough to accommodate 1 million people. If it was the last row, it was like from the peak of a mountain, and even the arena was pitifully small. Thankfully, Cultivator's eyesight was too good, and this bit of distance would not have much effect. To enter the arena, one had to first buy a ticket. Furthermore, the price of the ticket would be different at different times. For example, For the tournament this time, a single day's ticket was 1 star stone, but one could also buy through tickets, and until the end of the entire tournament, one would have to pay 10 star stones. Through tickets were very popular because ordinary people originally did not have the right to go to the 4th level, but after entering into the final rounds, all the tournaments would be held on the 4th level, and one could go up by buying through tickets. If it was a single ticket, one could not buy it at all. It was said that alchemist Zicheng's shadow was behind this arena. Indeed, he did not sell alchemical pills, but through this kind of method he could earn a lot of money. Furthermore, it could be lively, and he could fool countless prodigies and elites. Furthermore, it was not just the tickets. The gambling house also had a share of alchemist Zicheng's profits. Every time, it seemed like he was giving out alchemical pills for free, but it was equivalent to letting innumerable prodigies and elites perform for this alchemical pill for free, and it could completely make up for the loss of giving out alchemical pills. Who said that alchemist Zicheng was a sucker? Because Ling Han had registered to participate in the tournament, he could be exempted from the ticket, while the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had bought through tickets, and she had even resold them from someone else at a high price. They had long since been sold out through the official channels. So blackmail, it actually costs 100-star stones. Ling Han gritted his teeth. Though he had this money, and did not mind, the original 10-star stones had been sold for 100-star stones. He had been taken for a sucker. These peddlers are probably related to the officials. Otherwise, it would be impossible for all the tickets to be in their hands, Ling Han said in displeasure. In an instant, they have earned 10 times the original price. They really have a way of making money. He really wanted to see this alchemist Zicheng. He seemed extraordinary and refined, but in truth, he was completely focused on money. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden covered her mouth and laughed softly, her shoulders trembling slightly. "Let's go in and wait for your husband to show off his invincible might," Ling Han said with a smile. He put his arm around the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden and entered the arena. This was definitely the case for the sake of making money. The preliminaries would take 10 days to finish, and each additional day meant that they could sell one more day of individual tickets. This was also the reason why through tickets were so popular. Though the one-time investment was great, through the whole process, through tickets were really cheap. Ling Han shook his head. This preliminary round could clearly be completed in a single day, yet it had been forcefully split into 10 days. This was the reason why the pass seemed cheap. Alchemist Zicheng's way of doing business was truly slippery. He definitely had to meet this person and properly ask him for advice on how to make money. Because if he wanted to advance the divine demon sword to a celestial tool, who knew how much godly metal he would need? This was all something that had to be bought with money. There were really too many people who had registered, and the battles on the first level were also divided into 16 large circles. Each circle could send out one person, and then they would battle again. 8 people would advance, and then 4 people would advance. As long as they advanced to the 4th level, they would be able to proceed to the 4th level to fight in the finals. But even if they were divided into 16 circles, there were still too many people, so they could only be divided again. For example, in the group that Ling Han was in, there were a total of 100 people. "Hee, this promotion spot is mine," a young man in cyan said with an arrogant and despotic expression. "If you don't want to be injured, then obediently get out. Otherwise, even if you are beaten to death, you deserve it." At his side, shockingly, there were 11 people who had drawn their weapons and protected him in the center. This was clearly a sign that they were going to bully him with numbers. They are tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.